But wasn't, to Scott's point.
You want your brain working better than Joe Biden?
Wasn't it a lie? I mean, you can defend it, but wasn't it a lie that he was not going to pardon?
No, I believe the circumstances.
Frank, turn that shit off.
I think that we now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads.
All right, you ready to get started for real? What was that?
I don't know. All right, go ahead.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
But wasn't, to Scott's point, I mean, wasn't it a lie? I mean, you can defend it, but wasn't it a lie that he was not going to pardon him?
No, I believe the circumstances have changed. I think that we now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads.
You serious? In this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. Broadcasting from a Montana wilderness fortress at the headwaters of the Missouri, this is Matt Christiansen Live.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Matt Christiansen Live for Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. No, that was not a bit. That was some mysterious technical issue. Now, I'm just going to... I know I know you assured me. I hope I'm not being unkind. But, you know, when we do this once a month with Frank is always here. He's never not been, but it's like as tight as possible on the time, which I respect because you have your own show. I'm not trying to encroach on that production. But Frank pops in with like 10 seconds to go, I'll never screw you, man. I'll never screw you. And then I got random audio coming off you. I'm like, I don't know. I can't separate the Zoom from my system. I got to let this run. I hope there's nothing embarrassing on it.
I know. In fact, you know that was like, for all the many years performing live with my band, any musician who's ever been live on stage, they have memories of something going irreparably wrong and saying, stop, let's just do it again. And it always sucks when you have to do it, but I'm sorry I was the reason for it today.
No, that was a fun false start. It was a fun bit. I'm just glad it wasn't like, I don't know, just anything private or personal or anything like that.
I know, yeah. It wasn't any donkey porn.
It is the first Wednesday of the month, of course, so my friend Frank is here, quitefrankly.tv, for all things Quite Frankly. Frank, hope you and your family had a happy Thanksgiving. Welcome to the Christmas season, my friend.
I love it.
And on the docket tonight, we'll talk a little bit of reaction to the Hunter Biden pardon. There's so much New York news going on, so I'm really glad the timing lines up here because there's all kinds of things I want to talk to you about. CEO of UnitedHealthcare gunned down on the New York City streets early this morning. Looks like an assassination. We're in day 2 of Daniel Penny verdict watch. And in my estimation, the longer we go without... There should have been an acquittal in about 5 seconds. So the fact that we didn't have a 5-second acquittal, I'm getting a little nervous about.
Getting nervous too.
Mayor Eric Adams suddenly serious about deporting people. So get your take on what you think about him. Is he serious or is he angling for something? Later in the show, I got to talk about this trans kid case that was before the Supreme Court today. Bizarre arguments. Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, classics all around. Did you get a chance to listen to any of that today?
That I did not hear. This is the one story on the list that you had sent me that I'm actually I'm going to be a little bit more on the teach me side of things.
If we have time, we'll get into that. Otherwise, I can get into that when you're off for the night too. There's Sonia Sotomayor saying, well, hacking up the kids, it's really just like taking an aspirin. All medical interventions have inherent risk. What's the difference? You might die from an aspirin. Anyway, we'll get into that.
Yeah, she is definitely the one of the, not only just the stupidest person in the Supreme Court right now, but one of the stupidest people in the country. And it's crazy. I mean, all of the I've read Supreme Court transcripts just over the last 5 years that have made me I don't know what the hell to even think about her anymore as a creature. Like, what is she, and how the hell is she there? I don't know. Let's see what happens over the next couple of years.
She is diabetes concentrate. Her brain is made of it at this point.
Bad.
But back half of the show, I will take your calls as well. Link in the description to join the Discord server to call. Instructions and help from producer Tim on the server, of course. Any of tonight's news topics are open for discussion, or Christmas or New Year's topics. In general, it's time to get into the season. But before we hop into some of the other news, I just got to get your reaction to the news of the weekend and the week. The Hunter Biden pardon. Your thoughts?
Well, my brother asked me the same thing because, we were leaving one night. He was coming out of the music studio. I was coming out of here, and he said, all right, well, I don't know too much about this. So what's going on with Hunter Biden? I said, well, this is not some hallmark weepy gushy moment between a father doing something merciful for a troubled son. This is not even about the father's protective interest. This is about insulating a much larger network of uniparty, if you want to call them swamp creatures, transnational oligarch type creep gangster bastards. That's really what this is all about. If there was any way to really isolate the Bidens away from everyone else, and from a mainstream sense, we know that all of the familial interests that were out there in the in Ukraine that ensnared and implicated the Pelosi's, the McCains, the Romneys. I mean, you name it. This is very, very bipartisan out there. And if there was any way to really isolate the Bidens from everybody else, they would have been flushed out a long, long, long time ago. And you can say, if he went up there and said, I pardon him for anything that he has to endure with this gun charge or whatever the hell he was rung up for, that's one thing. You say, well, I would actually just scoff at it, because when you think about what showed up in the Marco Polo, did you see the Marco Polo reports as it was being compiled and let out over the years?
No.
This was the reports on what was in the laptop and the kind of crimes.
Okay, sure.
We're talking about direct evidence of hundreds of crimes that run the gamut between sex crimes, drugs, and international business and all that stuff, influence peddling and all that other stuff. When you think about what is implicated there and what is just ripe for the picking, ripe for the prosecuting, then I would have been like, okay, well, he just wants to let his son off the hook with the latest gun charge thing, because it's nothing compared to what's on that laptop. And of course, what implicates much more important people who are more closely tied in less than a degree of separation to much larger people and much larger organizations. I mean, we have Hunter Biden on what were they, not voicemails, but just recorded audio of him, freaking out about how one of his business partners, his business contacts, who just happens to be one of a top Chinese spy chief, has gone dark. He's talking to spy chiefs. He's out there right around the time that the coup in Ukraine got kicked off in 2014, and that's really the kicker here. The fact that you have this blanket over a decade of time, starting from January 1st, 2014, and going up until 2024, that of all things charged and may or may not have done. So it's just incredible. And to have people like Andrew McCabe go up on CNN to talk to somebody and discuss, well, the best thing that they can come up with is, well, the one thing that this span of time that's in the pardon is going to do is give the conspiracy theorists something to say. Like
you read my mind. I got the clip. If people didn't hear.
The effect of that very broad 10-year time frame is, ironically, it will perpetuate the conspiracy theories and the accusations around Hunter Biden. They'll never be resolved criminally, but it gives his detractors the opportunity to say, oh, well, he must have done something in 2014 to require a pardon going back that far.
Frank, the footprints in the snow fuel conspiracy theories about someone walking through that snow. It's really unfortunate.
No, it's crazy because, and everything's reversed here too. Because if you think about what they did to Donald Trump in his first term, especially with the whole Russia nonsense, which Andrew McCabe was a big part of. What they did was they reverse engineered what they hope they can be able to reverse engineer as crimes. They create a predicate to just open up the book on everybody, sprawl them out, sexually molest them for the world, try to shake out all their pockets, anything to do. What's going to fall out of these people so that we can charge them with process crimes along the way? Can we get somebody into a perjury trap that's not really related? It's tangential to the initial claims, but hell, we got them to commit a crime along the way, and that's good enough. That's what the entire thing was really about with Russia. And by the time that they were wrapping that all up in summer of 2019, there was no conviction. There was never anything that there was going to be a crime push. Robert Mueller looked like he had, Alzheimer's himself. He didn't even know where the hell he was, what was going on. There was just a bunch of people working this for public consumption, so that when the entire thing was abandoned for the next scam, which happened actually to be Ukraine related, when they started backing off of the whole Russia thing with those August 2019 hearings in front of the House, what did we have? We had big question marks. Nothing was resolved, so that the conspiracy theorists, Blue Anon, can continue to run with the whole Donald Trump is owned by Russia nonsense. Now, on the other hand, we have actual pieces of real evidence that have been stifled by the intelligence community, by a wholly owned and operated, enemy combatant then Twitter network. They were stifling real news that could lead to real investigations and real convictions. It's the exact opposite. And now that what we have here, instead of a demented Robert Mueller going out there and saying, I don't remember one thing or another, we didn't have enough to charge him, but who knows, something happened, just leaving everybody with the big cliffhanger that keeps people suspicious of Trump. On the other hand, they go out there and do the most suspicious thing you could ever do, and that is to give blanket immunity or blanket pardoning for 10 years.
Yeah, I didn't realize how unprecedented this really is until I looked into it. When it broke on Sunday, I was doing my stream, and I read it, and I'm like, anything and everything for a decade. Okay, that seems kind of odd, but I'm not a pardon historian, so I guess I'm going to have to look at how common or not this sort of thing is. Of course, there's really one parallel, and that would be Nixon's pardon, but even the boundaries on all of this are very legally dicey, which is what I was posting about in a video earlier today. But, Frank, we buried the lead, and that's my fault, not yours. But did you hear about the poop art?
No.
No, you didn't. Okay, good. I'll break this news to you, because we have in reaction to the Hunter pardon news, you have a man claiming to be a creditor of Hunter's on Twitter. His name is... This guy's name is Sean McGuire. He's on X, and he's posting, so what happens to the $300,000 in rent, back pay rent that Hunter owes my family from 2019 to 2020? He's pardoned now? Thanks, Joe. Now, McGuire is a Sequoia Capital partner who I guess was a Trump supporter this election. Hunter was a tenant but never paid him. He says Hunter was our tenant in Venice, California. Didn't pay rent for over a year because people were asking about this. He said tried to pay us with art made from his own feces.
That's disgusting.
Absolute shitbag. I'm not sure if he's calling Hunter. Well, anyway, no wait. He said, "Oh yeah, absolute shit." Absolute shitbag. Was his. So is that a literal accusation or I don't know? But I've not seen substantiation of the poop art. I've not seen images of this.
Well, one way or another, obviously it's absolutely incredible. I didn't see that. That's hilarious. But on an even sadder note, it probably would have been able to wipe the balance clean of anything he owed his landlord, because you remember, I think it was in 2021 we started getting the reports of all the Hunter Biden art that was being put out. I don't know if it was at Christie's or anything else like that, but it was fetching higher bids or maybe reserve prices that were higher than some Picasso paintings.
I've heard of the art in general. I've heard of the paintings. I've just not heard of the poop art. That's news to me.
I wonder if it's his own poop. If it's his own poop, it might have been more expensive than a Rembrandt.
Well, I just have a couple clips that I wanted to get some reaction to, because some of the reaction to this is as crazy as the news itself. Now, we mentioned Andrew McCabe, but my favorite reaction other than that one was I've seen this woman on X or on social media before. I don't know much about her, but she goes by the Politics Girl. You ever seen her around? She was saying that Joe Biden didn't lie. This is on CNN the other night. Joe Biden didn't lie about not pardoning Hunter. It's just the circumstances have changed. Because after all, now Trump was going to firing squad Hunter in the face if Joe Biden did not intervene.
But wasn't, to Scott's point, I mean, wasn't it a lie? I mean, you can defend it, but wasn't it a lie that he was not going to pardon him?
No, I believe the circumstances have changed. I think that we now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads, who's talking about running people around the country and making sure that everyone who's his enemy is going to be punished. And Hunter Biden lied about his drug use on a government forum when he was buying a gun. And he failed to file and pay taxes when he was a drug addict. He paid back those taxes with interest. Donald Trump himself was indicted for 17 counts of criminal tax fraud, more than Hunter.
So just like Liz Cheney, he's going to get firing squatted in the face. But thankfully, Joe saved him.
That woman in particular, I know other people on that panel, the host in particular, I've seen her say, put some doozies out there too. Not only does she look like the grandmother from Kindergarten Cop. You ever see Kindergarten Cop?
I've seen a lot of Schwarzenegger movies. Wait, no, is that one? That one is Schwarzenegger. Is it right? Am I thinking of the right movie? Yeah, okay.
Schwarzenegger. She looks like
I've seen a lot, but not that one.
You've never seen Kindergarten Cop?
No, I've not. Isn't that the one where the little kid says boys have a P and girls have a V? Isn't that the movie?
Yeah. Well, she looks like the grandmother from Kindergarten Cop. Okay. Anyway,
we'll look this up to confirm while you continue.
People like her. They would I can see her, the fact that they have television time so consistently, not only as featured guests, but they're also hosting shows, is just really incredible, Belle. It's just another indicator of where the culture is right now. And hopefully we're starting to peel that away and go back to somewhere else so that people like her can be down in New York City on St. Mark's or something like that. Oh, yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah. Okay. Nuts, too. But she's just so nuts. You can see her brain working. Like, we can actually observe these animals in the middle of okay, how am I going to wiggle out of this one? So it's an example. She asked, is it not a lie? You can defend it, but is it not a lie? Yes. Now, it is a lie, but go ahead and defend your position as to why you're fine with the reversal. No, would not. It's just really crazy to watch these people wiggle like this, and somebody believes them. That's the crazy part.
I got two more. Did you see Dan Goldman of Trump impeachment prosecution fame when the CNN host Brianna Keeler, I forget how you pronounce her name, but she said, hey, here's you saying last summer that Joe Biden would never pardon Hunter. What's it like to watch yourself say that?
In July of 2023, just after that plea deal fell through, this is what you said. I want to watch.
Do you think a pardon for his son would be a mistake?
Yes, and I don't think there's any chance that President Biden is going to do that, unlike his predecessor, who pardoned all of his friends and anyone who had any access to him. He kept on, and Merrick Garland kept on, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to investigate the president's son. If there is not an indication of the independence of the Department of Justice beyond that, I don't know what we could look for.
What does that feel like, watching yourself back then, reassuring people that Biden was not going to issue a pardon for his son?
Yeah, and I think that if that plea agreement and that plea deal had gone through, there would be no pardon. That was a satisfactory outcome.
It already fallen through.
That only was. Sorry?
When you reacted, this was when the deal had fallen through.
But again, did the plea deal have anything to do with a decade worth of crimes that may or may not have been committed?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, this has nothing. Has very little to do with gun charges. Very little to do with it. It's about a decade, a period of time in which some incredible things were happening in the world, much of which that is very important to understanding the current state of affairs and the meat grinder that is that stalemate. Well, it's not really a stalemate. Russia has effectively wiped out like at least 3 full armies that we have given Ukraine, and it just continues on like that. It's an essential piece of the timeline of understanding what's even going on with the current war. And the fact that it's not, I had to bring on a lawyer last night, a friend of mine, to ask about, shouldn't there be a level of specificity?
Yeah.
Why?
That's exactly what I was curious about.
And apparently, no.
The interesting argument I read, I posted a video about it earlier today, and the Supreme Court has never decided on that, but there's a pretty strong tradition in English common law of a specificity requirement for pardons. And so the debate would be, what was the understanding of the pardon at the constitutional framing or the founding? The case I read is from a guy named Aaron Rappaport, a law professor at University of California, Hastings, I think. It's linked in the video that I posted, but it's a pretty good argument. Ironically, the argument was made 4 years ago, predicting that Trump would do something this terrible. And so if he does, we have to make sure it's within the constitutional constraints. And now, all of a sudden, we are throwing out these non-specific decade-long pardons that really have no precedent in our history. And This guy had done an audit of presidential pardons dating back to 1974. And according to his audit, there were 7 that lacked mention of a specific crime or specific incident. There was the one, there's the Nixon one I mentioned, and then there were 6 with Iran-Contra. But even the ones with Iran-Contra under George H.W. Bush, the pardon mentioned matters related to the investigation of the special counsel. So even the special counsel has a limited jurisdiction related to a specific event. Really, we only have the Nixon pardon as a precedent out of thousands for this pardon. So something truly amazing. But lastly, suddenly everybody is just talking about things that were the McCabe conspiracy theories, not just years ago, but like weeks or months ago. You got Chuck Todd of MSNBC fame talking with Chris, I think it's Cizilla, of CNN fame. And here's Chuck Todd going out, oh yeah, Hunter's a total piece of crap because he got his dead brother's wife addicted to crack too. Maybe they did the art together. I don't know.
Yeah. both of our work.
Got her addicted to crack after sleeping with her. And it's not just a personal problem. Actually, this is demonstration of the Biden family's selfishness for running for president despite all of these problems.
I follow the Hunter Biden trial very closely. Mm-hmm. I read every transcript, all the testimony, because that's what all that was made public. You want to get angry? You read the Hallie Biden transcript, and that's Bo's widow. And essentially, he turned her into a crack addict. And this was all happening in 2017, 2018. And Joe and Jill Biden were so concerned about their family that they decided to run for president. So when you talk about the word selfish, it's almost like the word doesn't, their decision to run for president put the entire Democratic Party and the United States of America in the position that it's in now.
Oh, okay. Well, chinless Chuck. Good for him. He has no chin, by the way. That's why he grows the beard. But good for him on that respect. That was refreshingly harsh.
I guess the world is healing after all. But before time gets away from me, I got to get your thoughts on this UnitedHealthcare CEO assassination in Manhattan this morning. Have you followed this at all?
Yeah, I talking about it a little bit tonight. It's just the basics, of course, because the real question is what there's a few questions, rolling around out there about whether or not he was going to be coming in to discuss or answer questions. Is there ongoing investigation? What information he's going to offer up? Is it insider trading? Whatever. What is the nature of this pretty doofy kind of assassin? Because, he got the job done, but he doesn't seem very familiar or very, he doesn't seem like he is very smooth with his equipment there.
That's the weird thing. And for him, people comment on the video. I'm not going to play the video because, I'll incur the wrath of Neil Mohan at YouTube and the rest of them. But if you watch the video, it's out there. This guy is so calmly approaching. So the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, the largest health insurer in the country, walks out of his Manhattan hotel because they're having the big investor conference. Behind him is this guy in black, handgun, what looks like a suppressor on it, totally calm, takes it out, aims, like no hesitation at all, puts one in his back, apparently one more in his right calf. But as you're saying, as he's doing this, he's both totally confident and also fumbling with the weapon, as in the weapon is malfunctioning for whatever reason. People are speculating all over X. It's probably something related to the mechanics of that handgun with that suppressor, but it's a little bit beyond my expertise. So he's firing and having to manually rack the action each time to either clear a round or chamber a new round or both, because his setup is not working properly. So he's both totally confident and also seemingly unprepared, which is a really weird combo.
It's very strange. So, you know, when I saw that, the first thing I'm thinking is Sirhan? Is this some MK Ultra activation kind of a thing? Because then even just leaves very nonchalantly.
And then just walked away and rode an e-bike, and they saw him in Central Park, and that was it.
I know. And that was many hours ago at this point. And of course, there's everybody's all the criticisms of this case that I've seen since then have all been valid. The fact that even though most of his face is covered up and everything else, you have the most heavily surveilled city on earth are not able to find who he is. But you know, if you run a traffic light somewhere, I mean, the full force of the law comes down on you. January 6th. What the hell's going on here with facial recognition, gait recognition? Then again, I guess you need to understand who you're looking for to have, gait recognition make an issue, make something of it. But what about rerunning everything? I'm sure that the NYPD is doing this. It's not even just about we have this piece of information, video information, where he shoots the guy a couple times and then he walks off. But there's so much in that city as far as, cameras go that you should be able to backpedal and find where he came from and follow him the opposite way. Even if he got out of an Uber or something like that, follow the Uber. What are we talking about here? So I don't know. The big thing is motive, because the operation itself is very strange. Like you said, there is a level of calm confidence about the whole thing. He could not have been very professional because, number one, I don't think any professional would show up and not use equipment they are intimately familiar with.
Yeah, people are saying hitman, and I guess I don't follow many hitmen. But if you were a gun for hire, it seems like your gun operation would be a little more professional, to your point.
Yeah.
The motive, his wife is saying, well, we had received some threats recently about maybe lack of coverage issues. I assume that means like people or someone, their medical bills potentially weren't covered, or a service wasn't covered by the insurer, so they're mad about that. I did see what you mentioned about insider trading. I don't know, why that would motivate someone to. Maybe this guy just works for the DOJ and they're tired with the procedural hurdles, so they're just killing people now. If this guy's accused of insider trading, DOJ, Merrick Garland Company, they just take care of him on the street. Who knows? But yeah, there's no clear motive, and if this guy is hired, he seems remarkably unprofessional. So it leads me to believe this guy personally has some stake in it.
Yeah. I was considering that mostly because it doesn't seem like the type that you would want there to be any kind of paper trail with, or any kind of information that could be taken out of him if he somehow gets to survive this and is taken into custody alive. Then again, I don't understand how you can get into. There's plenty of places to hide in Central Park, but I can't imagine that park is not completely mapped with infrared at this point.
Well, what if he got on the subway and someone put him in a chokehold? Who would be prosecuted in that case? I wonder.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Depending, it's always a matter of the racial makeup of everything.
He looked white. He looked like a white guy. So if you're in the New York City area, watch out for white guys dressed in all black. Although I assume in the backpack, he's carrying around a backpack. I assume in addition to the weapon, he's probably carrying a change of clothes or something like that. But
probably.
I know usually you're around here for a half hour, so as always, the invitation is open, my friend. But, if you got places to be and your family to tend to, I understand. But I will talk Daniel Penny a little bit. If you
I'll stay with you for the pen. I'll stay with you for the Penny conversation. I was just doing a little bit of that before, and
sure.
And yeah, let's go for it.
Well, there's not much to say unless you know more than I do. But as far as I'm aware, second day of jury deliberations. This, of course, is the case of the Marine vet who put Jordan Neely in that chokehold May of last year. After Jordan Neely, high out of his mind on God knows what, gets on the subway, threatens people. Daniel Penny takes care of the problem. Daniel Penny charged with manslaughter and negligent homicide. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the longer the deliberations go, the worse I think it is for Penny. It should have been a 5-second acquittal. The jury is majority women, so I wonder if these are the exact sort of women who would shriek in that train car, "Oh, someone please save me." And then the guy that actually saves them, they try to put in prison for some sort of homicide charge. But the jury was fairly active today. They did ask for several pieces of evidence. They asked for the body camera video of the officers who responded to the scene. They wanted to see video taken by a Mexican journalist that depicts a lot of the 6-minute restraint itself. They wanted to see Penny's interview with police again. Have you seen that? I played it on my stream a few days ago, but man, always get a lawyer. You could just see them buttering him up. "Oh, you're a Marine, Daniel? Well, I'm a Marine too. Oh, what did you do? I did this. All right, Semper Fi, bro." They really get him going and try to make it seem like they're his friend before they start. "Hey, buddy to buddy, could you show me how you choked him out? Oh, I noticed you applied pressure here or did that." He's showing him everything. He's trying to be a good guy. I feel really bad for him. He's exactly the sort of person I would want to ride the train with and have in my community and all that. But you can see the police tactics in warming him up to get him to say things he shouldn't be saying. Not that they're not true. Nothing he said I consider incriminating in a layman's sense. It's just, what they're trying to do strategically. Anyway.
Absolutely. And I didn't see too much about that. I didn't see too much of the interrogation. I saw a little bit of it, but enough to see who the good guy is. And of course, at the time of all this happening on the subway, we already know enough. First of all, the whole race aspect is just a really awful part of our judicial system at this point that just needs to be rooted out with such ferocity, because it's just so sick. The fact that, and I said it before, well, he was not the only person subduing what's his name, Jordan Neely or whatever his name is. He's not the only person subduing him, and he certainly they weren't all white. You had a rainbow coalition of people that were riding on that train who felt equal amount of threatened by the way that this guy was the Michael Jackson impersonator that everybody was fawning over in the media for the weeks afterwards. Everybody was feeling the same level of discomfort. Did you see what Eric Adams had to say about Daniel Penny case?
Yeah, that was what I've got that prepped actually. I don't have a clip, but he was, as part of his press conference or whatever he's got going on this week, he was saying, I hope for a Daniel Penny acquittal, as far as I understand. Part of what he said, or maybe this was a radio interview. Yeah, this was a radio interview, not his press conference. But he said, quote, "You have someone on the subway, Daniel Penny, who was responding, doing what we should have done as a city in a state of having a mental health facility." Adams said he hopes the jury heard all the facts and that they will make the right decision. But yes, if only someone was in position or a position of leadership with the city to do something about this. But I get better late than never. I've never, to my knowledge, or at least I've not heard Eric Adams speak about this case before, but I guess I'm glad that he is, even if it's kind of late for that, because the jury's already deliberating.
Right. And that's why, obviously, that brings up the question, why is Eric Adams softening his tone on things like this? And of course, the willingness to talk to the incoming Trump administration, or actually already reaching out to them about cooperation with their deportation efforts and everything else. It's it all asks bigger questions about who's buttering who up. And the way I hate to see people like Daniel Penny's lives hanging in the balance while people make calculated political moves in the media that should actually just be common sense and and ethically just we just know what you're doing, and there's really no consideration that needs to be made. But everybody stone walls and sandbags each other in really crazy ways. And like you said before, day 2 of jury deliberations, the fact that this was not decided in a less than an hour is nerve-wracking, and I really pray for the best for him.
Yeah, if you're the sort of person wondering how society got the way that it is as far as criminality, safety issues, and all that, and you take more than I'll be generous. How about I'll say an hour to acquit Daniel Penny? Well, you get the society you deserve at that point. It's so frustrating that we can't look at a lot of these things just from a layman's sense. I know there's always the technicalities of the law, but as far as I understand, again, no cameras in the courtroom, but the closing argument from the defense was something to the effect of, who would you rather ride the train with? This crazy drug addict bum with a criminal history, or this Marine vet who's standing up to defend the people on the train who can't defend themselves? I know sometimes there can be ambiguities, complexities in the law, but can we just get to a point where we're clear about to whom should we defer? Like, where there's a coin flip, and I don't think this is a coin flip case, to whom are you going to defer? The guy who honestly spoke with the police to his own detriment, who has served his country, who stood up and was courageous in an important moment, or a guy who has spent years, possibly decades, terrorizing people, punching grandmas in the face on the streets of New York City? To whom are we going to defer? It's basic sanity type stuff. Before I let you go, do you ever get the privilege of seeing a Jordan Neely moonwalk in all your time in New York?
No.
You missed him?
Jordan Neely in particular? Maybe. I don't know. It could have been one of the many mentally ill people I've seen dance down there. I remember one of my first, it was probably like 1994, 1995. I don't know when the hell it was. Maybe a little bit later in the 90s. So it probably wasn't the first time I was watching all that craziness. But it's one of those first memories it'll just stick with me. Titanic had come to Broadway. They didn't like take the movie Titanic plot and bring it to Broadway, but it was just Titanic. And it's a story of the Titanic. It was a musical and all that stuff. And I went with my family one night, and leaving, I remember it was a cold night. Cold, probably like the night the Titanic sank. And we came outside, and there was this black homeless guy, scruffy beard, hair all over the place. He had weaved something through his hair. It almost looked like golden Christmas garland or something like that. I remember there was something going on with his head. He has shirt off, these raggedy pants. I don't know if he had shoes on, but he's just kind of like dancing through the middle of the street, screaming that he was Jesus. And I was saying to him, and it just stuck with me. I said, wow, I know he's not Jesus, but he thinks he is. And that's insane. And that to somebody at CNN today, that would, if, that would have been called performance art. Oh, he was a performance artist. He's outside. He's just trying. I don't know what the hell, but I just remember that was one of those first things. Like, damn, that guy's really sick.
Did you ever Did you see the video of Jordan Neely interacting with the late Joey Boots of Howard Stern show fame?
No. How long ago was that?
I don't know when the original clip was posted, but the last video I posted about Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny, I was sure to dig that up because it was relevant to whatever I was talking about. But I think Joey Boots died in like 2016. It must have been before that, because Jordan Neely had been doing this for years. But Joey Boots, I don't know much about him other than he kind of provoked people on the streets of New York. That was kind of his bit. But you got, to your point about being like this inspirational performance artist that everyone loves, Joey Boots, like, I don't know, calls him a douchebag or something. Does something lightly confrontational. And Jordan Neely's in his face talking about how he'll kick his ass, kill him, calling him an F slur, just, real progressive hero of kindness, tolerance. And it's a funny clip in the moment, but you're like, holy cow, this actually got that guy killed like a decade later, which makes sense, because how long are you going to run around the city like a crazy person yelling in people's faces and survive? But
and again, that's an indictment of our culture, because it's not an indictment of police work. It's a culture's pressure to pull back on on what we once thought was an appropriate barrier, an appropriate buffer between public displays of mental illness and encroaching people's personal space and rights to, reasonable rights to privacy and safety in public settings versus any other. There really isn't any way to articulate what allows people like Jordan Neely to go and do their thing on public transit other than there is a race narrative that does not serve normal black people in this country, that lumps them in with crazy, that it forces people who are activated by this kind of narrative and this kind of activism, it forces them to rationalize what the hell someone like Jordan Neely is and what they have expressed in their behavior over the course of decades and their criminal record and putting that away. And on the other side, it invites people on Daniel Penny's corner to either stop paying attention to the basic instinct to go and help people who need to be protected, people who are vulnerable and need protection. And that instinct is being dampened because you know what you're up against on the other side of that confrontation if something goes south like this. And it's a horrible thing. It's a really, really horrible thing. Culturally, I don't know how long it's going to take and under what conditions it's going to take this virus to burn itself out. But it's a horrible thing.
Well, I've kept you 10 minutes extra.
We love you. You're very special.
Thank you for your contribution to the show, as always. Quite frankly.tv, if people want to find Frank's nightly show at 7 Eastern, right? Make sure I get the time right. Yep, 7 Eastern weekly, quite frankly. Frank, is there anything else you'd like to promote before you're out of here?
No, thank you so much for the time. Quite frankly.tv, but I'm still on YouTube and Rumble and everything else, weeknights at 7. And Matt, all the best to you and the family. Happy Thanksgiving once again. And I look forward, the next time we do this, it's going to be 2025.
I'll see you in the new year. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, there he goes, quitefrankly.tv for all things Frank. And quite frankly, I got plenty more news items to get through before I get to your calls at the top of the hour. But a little bit lost in our discussion there about Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely and New York is what Mayor Eric Adams had to say about immigration and deportation, which Frank got to a little bit, but I want to get to the specifics on that. Because Mayor Eric Adams is, I guess charitably, you could say he's having a change of heart on some of these issues, or he's seen enough to change his mind and become potentially more rational, or he's strategizing or angling for something. But yeah, in addition to some commentary that is apparently in support of Daniel Penny on the subway and hoping he gets acquitted, he had a press conference this week in which he said, not only am I changing my mind on who should be deported from this country, but I'm going to meet with Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, to figure out how we can actually operationalize that. So the change of heart that I'm talking about isn't just about deportations. It's who should be deported. And now he's not fully on board with the anybody and everybody, or at least on the scale that maybe Tom Homan is. I don't know. But what Eric Adams is saying now is I want criminal migrants deported. So those would be people who have committed crimes beyond their unauthorized presence in this country. But what he means by that is not just people convicted of crimes, which was his prior stance. He wants them to stand trial and go through the process here. And when they're convicted, then we send them back. Now he's saying that they're even charged with crimes. He wants them gone. And he's going to work with the Trump administration to make that happen. Here is his commentary.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. And I would love to sit down with the border czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. In the era of cancel culture, no one's afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me because I'm going to protect the people of this city.
Yeah, unfortunately, Eric Adams also canceled school to put migrants in the gym. Remember that back in January? Oh, the weather's bad. We got to move the migrants into the high school gym, so the kids are going to have to do remote learning again today, just like the COVID days. So what's going on with Eric Adams? Has he seen the light on some of these issues? Is there a strategy angle? A lot of people are speculating he's not really changing his mind. He's looking to get in the good graces of the incoming Trump administration so that perhaps he could secure a pardon because he's facing prosecution from the Justice Department for charges on bribery, campaign finance issues, conspiracy offenses. That indictment was unsealed in September. I'd like to believe these people can change their minds and we can see some improvement in these things. I don't know. It's hard for me to not think that there's some sort of strategy going on here. But I guess even if it's a personal strategy at play, if it's in pursuit of ends that are of benefit for New York City and the American people, okay. I mean, I guess that's better than whatever we've been doing for the last 4 years or so. But before the top of the hour, I got to have plenty of time to talk about what happened at the Supreme Court today, because I expected a spectacle. I talked about this case last week a little bit. The show really lived up to the hype, let me tell you. All the freaks were protesting outside. This at the Supreme Court, of course. At least one freak was actually inside arguing the case. But as mentioned prior last week, this is the case of U.S. v. Skrmetti. I don't even know how to say it, but it's Skrmetti. U.S. v. Skrmetti. And this is the challenge to Tennessee's ban on transgender procedures for minors. So really anything physical. Puberty blockers, hormones, surgery. Tennessee banned those things last year. And then Biden's DOJ and the ACLU challenged the law. And so it's been appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was heard today. And the ACLU sent trans lawyer Chase Strangio, a woman presenting as a man, to argue the case on behalf of the families who are represented by the ACLU. So here she is appearing on Jake Tapper's show on CNN yesterday.
The case comes at a time when 26 states have passed laws restricting healthcare treatments for transgender youth. How do you plan to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court in a case that could have wide-ranging implications beyond the state of Tennessee?
And when we look at the map of states that ban this type of evidence-based healthcare, we went from 0 states that had these bans in 2020 to now more than half the country. So before the court tomorrow, the question is really a simple one as I see it. This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that treats people differently because of their sex, and therefore the court has to treat it like all other forms of sex discrimination, and that's why it's unconstitutional.
That's disgusting.
Well, that's very rude of Jake, but I tend to agree. Now, why have half of states banned this stuff in just 4 years? Oh, we've seen 20-some states ban it in only 4 years' time. It's because everyone's hateful, I guess, or because everyone's trying to violate the rights of others. No, it's because you freaks have been pushing this experimentation not just for adults, but experimentation on children. That sort of degeneracy, that sort of insanity is going to get pushback in state legislatures, and it should. That's why states have moved on this so quickly. It's because you people have moved on pushing the issue so quickly. But notice the argument, the legal argument. When I discussed this case last week, I expected this was going to be argued on substantive due process claims because I had read that somewhere. Apparently that was fake news, or at least that's not the core of their argument. The idea there was that you would have a due process right under the 14th Amendment to these trans kid surgeries and puberty blockers and all that stuff. The same place they found the supposed right to abortion, the current right to gay sex, they were going to find the right to trans kid surgery there in the penumbras of the 14th Amendment. They actually did mention that argument briefly today, but as the lawyer there described, that's not the core of the legal argument that they're making. They're making an equal protection argument based on sex. As in, per the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, because this law, they say, makes distinctions on who can receive this supposed treatment, this medical treatment, based on sex, they're saying it's unconstitutional on those grounds because, of course, the 14th Amendment says that no state can deny a person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. This says that you can have this or you can't have that based on sex, so it's unconstitutional. That's their argument. Here's the Biden lawyer explaining that reasoning to the court.
We think it would be sufficient for the court to recognize that a law that on its face says you can't have medications inconsistent with sex is a sex classification, but then you could send this case back and have the Sixth Circuit do the heightened scrutiny analysis in the first instance. Tennessee now is completely overriding parents' wishes when they are best positioned to know their individual child and to have a good sense of whether the risks of this treatment are outweighed by the benefits.
But this isn't, I guess my point is, even if we decided that this wasn't a sex-based classification that triggered intermediate scrutiny, that would not prevent parents from still asserting the substantive due process right.
Yes, of course. I agree with that.
Okay, so because the 14th Amendment has been understood to block laws that make distinctions based on sex, at least without sufficient reasoning, it's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause to say you can't pump these kids full of hormones and chop them up. That's their argument. Now, some problems with that reasoning. As the state of Tennessee is arguing and did argue today, this is not a sex-based distinction. It is a medical distinction. If the state of Tennessee treats use of drugs differently, that is to say, sometimes when you use a drug, it's pursuant to a medically valid prescription. That's legally fine. Sometimes when you're popping pills, that's abusive. That's drug addict behavior. That's not fine. What they're doing is making a distinction on a medical procedure and the use of drugs. They're saying this particular use of it is not fine. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever you are. There's no sex-based distinction. It's about medical application, and the transitioning of children in the judgment of the state of Tennessee is not a valid medical application for these services or these drugs. But even if it is a sex-based distinction, and the Biden lawyer and the ACLU, they're right. The court accepts that argument that this is a sex-based distinction, that you're telling little boys they can't do this because of their sex or gender, but little girls can because of their sex or gender. Okay, just because there is a distinction based on sex in a law does not mean that the law is unconstitutional. It means that there's a certain level of scrutiny that is applied to that law in judicial review that determines whether it is constitutionally square or not. When you hear the lawyer talk about, well, we're going to apply this heightened scrutiny to the law and review here, that's what she's referring to, the scrutiny of the judicial review. When we talk about distinctions based on sex, we're talking about intermediate scrutiny. This is the standard in the Supreme Court precedent. So to comply with the 14th Amendment, sex-based distinctions in law have to satisfy this standard called intermediate scrutiny. The law in question, to pass intermediate scrutiny, the law in question has to further an important government interest, and it must do so by means that are substantially related to that interest. Well, does Tennessee have an important state interest? I would say so. Child welfare. Sounds like a pretty important state interest. We have all sorts of laws pursuant to that interest all across the country. Are the means of pursuing that interest substantially related to the interest? Well, yeah, don't pump the kids full of damaging drugs and hormones. Don't chop up the kids. Seems substantially related to the interest of child welfare. And so the appeals court looked at this case, the lower court looked at this case, and they actually decided that even this level of scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, wasn't necessary. They said there actually is no constitutional issue with the law, at least as a fundamental right or a distinction based on a protected class is concerned. So strict scrutiny, as you would get if a fundamental right was limited by a law. Intermediate scrutiny, as you'd get in a alleged sex-based distinction here. Those standards don't apply. What applies is the lowest scrutiny, the lowest form of review that the Supreme Court would apply, which is rational basis. Is there a rational basis for the existence of this law? Yes. Stop chopping up the kids. Stop pumping the kids full of hormones. That was the review that the Sixth Circuit Court used. And that's what the state of Tennessee, the people defending this law, that's what they want. It's just, this is well within our police power as a state. As long as it passes a rational basis review, it's perfectly square. Tennessee's law is clearly rational. And that's what the lower court said. Presumably something to that effect is what the Supreme Court will say. But even if we do say that this is a sex-based distinction, This law has to satisfy intermediate scrutiny, and it doesn't, which is the argument that the Biden administration is making, and the ACLU and their trainee lawyer that they're making. If you accept that reasoning, this is a sex-based distinction. It fails the appropriate standard of review at the Supreme Court. Well, now we've opened the door to all sorts of legal problems. It's if we're going to say it's not an important state interest achieved through means of substantial relation to that interest, okay, then on what basis do we separate bathrooms between men and women, for example? On what basis do we say you can't have men and women's sports? All of a sudden, those are also not important state interests achieved through means related to those interests. And so this is where you saw Brett Kavanaugh in his questioning today really challenging the Biden lawyer and the ACLU lawyer on this question. If we accept your reasoning, this is a sex-based distinction and it fails the intermediate scrutiny standard, can we make sex-based distinctions in law or public policy anywhere ever? And trying to get around that question, the government lawyer makes a pretty interesting admission.
Looking ahead, do you think it's logically possible, as a matter of constitutional decision-making, to say that laws like the one at issue here do not satisfy intermediate scrutiny, but laws that restrict women's and girls' sports in a way that transgender athletes cannot participate would satisfy intermediate scrutiny? Is that logically possible?
Oh, yes, definitely. So we do think intermediate scrutiny applies in both contexts, but there are a different set of state interests at play. And I think one readily apparent difference is that in the context of sports, there are arguments made that that affects the rights of cisgender women, and that the ability to allow transgender women to compete on those teams is going to be other regarding in the sense of having those external impacts. There's nothing like this here. Allowing transgender individuals who have carefully thought about this and consulted with their parents and their medical team to access these medications that have health benefits recognized here and abroad in no way affects the rights of other people.
Whoops. That's what you call a whoops argument. If you had trouble following there, what she's saying is, no, just because we say that this is an unconstitutional law because it makes unconstitutional sex-based distinctions, that doesn't mean that we have to allow men into women's sports. Why? Because men in women's sports harms women, is what she's arguing. You're not supposed to say that part. You're not supposed to grant that premise. But it's a bunk argument anyway, because yes, absolutely. Trans hormones and surgeries do affect the rights of other people. It affects the rights of the kids who have these hormones pumped into them and the surgeries conducted on them. It physiologically alters them or anatomically alters them permanently. It absolutely affects the rights of other people in much worse ways than swimming against Leah Thomas or having some tranny on the volleyball team. I'm not diminishing the importance of that cause, of that issue. It is important. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying if you had to pick, would you rather have your daughter play in and or forfeit a soccer match that was unfair, or would you rather have someone hack up your daughter, chop off all sorts of healthy tissue, and potentially have her never be able to be a mother, and most likely unhappy, potentially even suicidal for the rest of her life? Which one of those affects the rights of someone else in a more negative way? The argument was laughable for many reasons, but there you have it. The laws about women in men in women's sports are fine because that actually has a negative effect on women. Okay, thank you. I didn't know we were going with that premise. Of course, I mentioned you have Sonia Sotomayor and Jumanji Brown Jackson. You know they were going to have some bangers during this hearing, and they did not disappoint. Jumanji Brown Jackson said that this law is exactly like Virginia's law in Loving v. Virginia, which is the case that overturned Virginia's ban on interracial marriage. So because the court overturned a law against interracial marriage, clearly this means there's a constitutional equal protection right to transing the kids.
As I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
So can a state ban minors from interracial marriage is the real question we got to get at. Now, if you want to treat this argument seriously, again, the correct understanding, the correct take, the Tennessee law is not a distinction based on sex at all. It's not sex discrimination at all. It's a regulation or the banning of a particular medical practice. Doesn't matter what race you are. Doesn't matter what sex you are. We're not doing that in the state of Tennessee. It has nothing to do with racial or sex discrimination. That's the difference. When Tennessee's lawyer defending this law, he said, well, maybe we should stop mutilating the kids. That's all we're trying to do. And Sonia Sotomayor says, well, I mean, come on. All medical interventions have risks. You're making the hacking up the kids sound like it's so dangerous. Think about it. Even taking an aspirin has inherent risks. So, popping an aspirin, cutting off a kid's dick, what's really the difference, says Sonia Sotomayor.
It becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
As though some risk is not greater than other risk, and as though states are not constitutionally entitled to assess that risk for themselves. As though because there's 0.0001% risk in one thing and, I don't know, maybe 25% risk conservatively in another, that we have to treat those exactly the same. But the most preposterous claim, and it's higher than 25, of course. I'm just saying, even according to their own studies, they cite statistics like, you might have negative unexpected outcomes or side effects in 25% of cases. Now, if you ask me, it's 100% of cases. When you're altering a child physiologically, anatomically, to conform with with gender delusion, that is a 100% negative outcome. But I'm using some of their statistics to take on this risk assessment argument. But the most preposterous claim that Sotomayor is saying there is that millions of people benefit from trans hormones and trans surgeries. No, they don't. Millions? Well, just because one person had a bad time doesn't mean you stop the millions of kids who benefit from getting hacked up by these quack doctors. Even if these kids, as she's arguing, did exist in the millions, they don't. The ones benefiting so greatly, they don't. It is still within a state's right to assess the risk of the practice against the supposed benefits and to regulate that medical practice. We do this in every context of the medical practice. So any other medical procedure, states are going to do the same thing. Well, here are the risks, here are the benefits. If the state has decided, the people through their state have decided that, no, we think that this practice is actually barbaric and really has no benefit and ought to be outlawed, they are within their state's police power, their rights as a state, and the people within it to regulate or ban that practice. We do this in the medical context all the time. And that's why this case is almost certain to go Tennessee's way. We're not going to get a decision until the spring. Based on the arguments today, I think it's a pretty safe bet the court will uphold Tennessee's law, probably on the same basis that the appeals court did. It's not a sex-based distinction. It is not a fundamental substantive due process right. It's just regulation of the medical practice that states do all the time. John Roberts focused his questions on that theme today. Why should the Supreme Court take over medical regulation, which is left to the states in any other context? Sam Alito focused a lot of his questions on whether the practice helps or harms, because if it harms or if it's debatable or unclear, well, the state is clearly pursuing a valid reason in regulating or banning the practice if there are downsides. He also challenged on whether transgenderism should count as a protected class in constitutional law. He said, are you really getting after a sex-based distinction here? Or are you talking about a transgender-based distinction? Because if it's the latter, that has no basis in terms of the Equal Protection Clause. That's not a protected class that exists in the Supreme Court precedent under the Equal Protection Clause. Kavanaugh, you heard focus on the danger of expanding the scope of the intermediate scrutiny standard for sex-based distinctions. I would be shocked if he went, if he sided with Biden and the ACLU on this. Barrett was similarly wary. Thomas was characteristically fairly quiet. He did speak up a little bit. The only question mark for me is Gorsuch, who didn't speak at all today, which is a little odd because he's not normally shy. But it is notable that Gorsuch's biggest slip as a justice, at least in my opinion, was in 2020 when he wrote the opinion saying that, yes, transgenderism is covered by the Civil Rights Act when it bans discrimination based on sex in the workplace. So this was a case where someone was fired at a Michigan business for coming out as transgender, and Neil Gorsuch, writing for the majority, said, yeah, that's actually against the Civil Rights Act, because even though they were talking about sex-based discrimination in that law, and transgenderism wasn't even a concept that existed in the public mind in the 1960s, it actually covers transgenderism too. So Gorsuch has been a little squishy on the transgender stuff in the past. Was he staying quiet today for a reason? Does he have another surprise in store for us? Even if he does, it would be shocking for the crazy three on the court, the Jackson, Kagan, Sotomayor, for them to pull two others away, even if they somehow pulled Gorsuch. So I fully expect the Supreme Court to uphold Tennessee's law and establish the right of Tennessee and all the other states to regulate this issue as they see fit, as they should. Now, I know I'm a little bit long. People who want to call in, I really appreciate your patience. I just got a couple quick things I wanted to mention, and I will get right to your calls. Super chatters, too. I know you guys have been waiting for a long time, so I'll see if I can find a way to get to you as well. Appreciate your patience. Hang tight. I have not forgotten
We love you. You're very special.
But let me talk a little bit about South Korea and martial law, and I don't know anything about South Korea or South Korean politics. But I thought the scene was pretty crazy. Don't look to me for informed takes on what exactly is happening here. But the scenes are pretty incredible. Something like a January 6th for real. Yesterday, the South Korean president Yoon Suk Yeol, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but he suddenly declared martial law, sending armed troops to encircle parliament, their legislature, apparently to enter the building and to stop lawmakers. Here's some video from the scene. The martial law was declared because the president's political opponents control parliament. And the president has vowed to eliminate anti-state forces he says are sympathetic to North Korea. These troops were entering parliament, and while that happens, you had lawmakers freaking out, and then they were climbing walls to get back in there. They voted to override the president and his martial law declaration, which apparently they have the legal authority to do. And then the troops left. The president himself lifted the declaration of martial law hours later. The whole thing lasted only like 6 hours. Now, the troops were apparently sent to arrest opposition party members who have been working on impeachment proceedings against many of the president's officials. There were some scuffles between protesters and the troops, but no reported injuries or major property damage beyond those windows that we saw. Now, under South Korean law, the president does have the power to declare martial law in times of emergency or war to maintain the peace. Unclear what sort of emergency supposedly existed here. At least as far as I understand. South Korean lawmakers are now moving to impeach the president himself. To remove him, they would need 2/3 of parliament and 2/3 of their constitutional court judges. The vote could come as soon as Friday. And lastly, the Pete Hegseth Kavanaugh sequel continues. Trump's pick for defense secretary has been, of course, fighting off allegations of improper boob grabs, possibly an ass grab in addition. And now he's a drunk. Anonymous Fox News colleagues are telling NBC News that they were alarmed by Hegseth's drinking on the job at Fox News. They frequently smelled alcohol on him before he went on air. One of these sources said he smelled the booze as recently as last month and heard Hegseth complain about being hungover this fall. This follows the New Yorker publishing a story on Sunday about Hegseth drinking at 2 jobs he held at nonprofit veterans groups before he joined Fox. And the pressure is getting to Republican senators, at least reportedly. Remember, Hegseth can lose up to 3 Republican senators and still secure the nomination, assuming unanimous Democrat opposition, which will likely be the case. Now NBC is reporting that at least 6 Republican senators are saying they're not comfortable with Hegseth's nomination, or possibly even outright decided on opposing him. The report here does not name the senators, but the report says this is according to 3 Republican sources with direct knowledge. They're saying there are at least 6 who are opponents of Hegseth's now. And if that holds, Hegseth is done. So Hegseth is doing the Senate tour, trying to persuade senators, of course. And he's rejecting the claims in these reports, saying they're untrue, saying it's a media circus, all that. Whether they are true or not, reportedly Trump is now considering replacing him. Reports yesterday and today say that Trump is considering Ron DeSantis for defense secretary instead. This, again, according to anonymous sources with knowledge. The Washington Post is reporting that Trump discussed the idea with DeSantis on Tuesday. Now, personally, I wouldn't be mad about having either guy as defense secretary, but I think you got to be mad about the principle here. Don't let Democrats and the media sink nominations with bullshit and gossip. Trump picked Hegseth for a reason. Presumably that reason is because he thinks Hegseth is the best man for the job. So if you believe that, give him the benefit of the hearing. Do not withdraw the nomination prematurely. I hope that Trump doesn't do that. If you think the nomination is in question, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to people who you may be able to replace that person with if the nomination fails. But I just hope that Trump doesn't cave to the pressure and withdraw the nomination, or that Hegseth bows out early. Hegseth is still defiant, so I don't necessarily think that he will, though these things can change quickly. Even if Hegseth is on thin ice, you give him the benefit of the hearings. You put senators on record to confirm or to reject. You don't do this crap laundered through the media where he said, she said. We play the telephone game. 6 senators who we won't name opposed him, but nobody gets to know who they are, even though we can probably guess most of them. If you picked Hegseth, you picked him for a reason. Give him the benefit of the fair process, the nomination, the hearing, and senators on record supporting or opposing. I hope that's the way that this goes. And if it ends up being Pete Hegseth, great. He seems like a guy with the right ideas, probably a man with some faults, like a lot of people, including those in Congress, have. If it doesn't work for reasons X, Y, and Z, and you get Ron DeSantis as a replacement after the process has concluded, that's fine too. I don't think Ron DeSantis would do a bad job or anything like that. I don't like the principle of these people controlling nominations through media rumors, anonymous sources, he said, she said type bullshit. And that's the show that we're watching right now. But I'm almost 15 minutes past the hour. Let me see if I can get some callers, get some thoughts on tonight's topics for, I don't know, we'll go to the top of the hour, at least something like that. And super chatters, I see you. I will be back with you shortly. Maybe I'll take a break at the bottom of the hour and get to some of your super chats. I appreciate your patience. First up tonight is Egrin. Egrin, are you there? Egrin?
Yo, your mic's muted.
Oh, thank you for being my tech producer. I'm glad you caught that because, yeah, I didn't want it the show feeding. Anyway, good job. I appreciate your help with the duct tape production. What's on your mind?
So there's been talk that Biden may do preemptive pardons after the Hunter Biden pardon. I don't know how true is that, but if he does that, that just, as some people have said, it's a complete admission of guilt of everything that Fauci and Adam Schiff and among others have done against the people.
Yeah, I've seen reports for some of the names that you mentioned. So Fauci, Schiff, potentially Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or people involved with the January 6th committee. Yeah, it is going to be really interesting to watch. We'll, I don't even know who's making I saw the reports, but I don't know what the source is. I assume probably the same anonymous sources with knowledge. But it is interesting that a pardon, as you mentioned, carries an implied admission of guilt. And I hadn't really thought about this until I was reading about the Hunter pardon. And really the only pardon cases that have worked their way through the Supreme Court are about whether people want to accept the pardon or not. And one of the reasons people sometimes opt not to accept a pardon is what you're getting at, that it is viewed as an admission of guilt. And go ahead.
The problem is it's the fact that the crime has not even been convicted. It's not even a crime that we know that you've done this crime, you're guilty of it, and then it's a pardon. There's no clear distinction, or like there's judicial issues with the said court case. If there was like an actual I think back of the shooting back in Texas where that guy got pardoned, we at least understood, hey, that jury system was messed up. He deserves an actual pardon.
Yeah, that was Daniel Perry, who I always confuse with Daniel Penny. That's the guy who it was the unfortunate AK man with the no limbs girlfriend, and the AK man charged the car, and that was the guy who said, "We're walking around armed tonight. Pussies won't do anything about it," and he got shot dead because he charged a car with his AK, and the guy didn't want to waste his time figuring out what that was about before defending himself.
Yeah, and that it's kind of strange. Why are you trying to do preemptive pardons for people that have not even been convicted of a crime in the first place?
Yeah, their argument, I guess, is that we anticipate that Trump and his people are going to target these people with lawfare because they've been his political adversaries. Very interesting coming from the people who have been utilizing lawfare this entire time. So we'll see. I wonder if Joe Biden will go the full length of pardoning himself even. That would be very interesting to watch.
As far as I know, that he cannot pardon himself.
It's unsettled. There's no reason he can't. It just hasn't been adjudicated. So, because nobody's ever done it before.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated. On the SCOTUS issue, I find it funny how a lot of progressive, even like David Pakman, is like, oh, it's fine that the drag kids go on, but you can't bring kids to a stripper club. It's like the same argument right there.
Did they actually say that? Because I would think they would say as long as there's parental consent, it's fine. I to be consistent, I would expect them to say that.
No, they're not going to be. That's the thing. They're not going to be consistent on this at all.
So kindergarten class at the strip club is out, but drag show at the library is fine.
Or even just a normal like drag show strip club, the whole thing, like no difference.
Okay, you could still. That's right. Do they do that sometimes? Like it's actually at the strip club, but it's scaled down a little bit, so it's not full scale nudity. You still use the runway and all that.
Pretty close to it. The whole 9 yards. I would say, pretty close to it.
Oh. That sounds like I'm sure I could find that in like Portland or Seattle if I looked. But
a lot of places, it's no difference. And the fact is, progressives like David Pakman, Phil DeFranco, and like I think secular talks, they're gonna go down the same road as far as with SCOTUS on this whole trans kid issue. They're not gonna back down, and they're going to use the same aspirin logic as everything else.
Well, and it's totally insane. You want to have an argument about the procedure, which I think is insane enough. Don't get me wrong. I'm not minimizing that. If in my state, I don't want these things happening either. But it is another level of insanity to say, not just are these things good, but the Constitution protects them.
Speaking of
that's
own
plainly
state,
insane.
Well, speaking of your own state, Montana lawmakers crossed aisles to block a trans bathroom ban in the state capital.
Yeah. So we have our own transgender lawmaker of momentary fame. Was that last year when this guy made a show in our state legislature about that very issue of stopping child gender transitions in this state? And he got up there and said that all the Montana lawmakers who opposed child gender transitions had blood on their hands. And so he was punished by the Speaker of the Montana House for breaking decorum. Made a whole scene of this, riled up a bunch of protesters. Now this is Zoe Zephyr from Missoula. I call him Zooey because he spells it Zooey, Zooey, and he's from Missoula, so he's Zooey. But Zooey wants to use the women's bathroom at the Montana Capitol, much like Sarah McBride from Delaware potentially wants to use the bathrooms at the U.S. Capitol, the women's bathrooms. So, and I haven't looked into that, but you're exactly right that for some reason, whatever the committee is or whoever handles this as a matter of policy at the Montana Capitol, the vote was something like 12-10. I don't know if you have that, but they voted with Zooey to allow Zooey to use the women's room.
Yes.
Yeah. Shocking.
It's 10-12.
Yeah, so it must be some committee that governs the rules. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, House committee.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's and on the assassination, Mexican tunnels.
On you're talking about in the New York City? What do you mean? Explain.
Just Mexican tunnels. That's the only way that an assassin may have escaped. Mexican tunnels.
You think like the cartels built him a route in New York City or something?
Well, just sort of illegal tunnels. I mean, there were tunnels.
I was going to say, I remember the tunnels, but they weren't Mexican cartels. That was like this time last year.
Well, they were Mexican laborers that were.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
I do remember that one.
It's not exactly. So, the assassination happened on the island. So, but you could still dig deep enough to at least go below where the Juarez is. So, if you're able to do it, maybe.
All right. Well, thank you for the call, man. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. One last important issue is. Rig Johnson is going to the Australian Championship for golf. I mean, it's right in there.
I don't even know what that's about. Get out of here. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, Maverick is up next. Maverick, what do you got? Maverick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, a couple things. So I don't think this would happen, but I think it would be hilarious if it did. And I would have to talk to a lawyer about it. But imagine if Biden's pardon of Hunter Biden is deemed unconstitutional and gets struck down. And so then Hunter Biden goes to jail because for that specific thing that he's been prosecuted on.
Come on, man.
Because his pardon was so vague, trying to protect him from everything, it actually gets struck down and he protects him from nothing.
That would be ironic and hilarious to watch. Now, do you know how that would happen? And I don't mean to put you on the spot because I don't. And that when I was reading about this for the video I posted today, like to the extent there is a constitutional question about the validity of this pardon, and I think that there is. I think the case that it's legally suspect is kind of persuasive, to be honest.
Well, and I watched that video today, and I would assume, because isn't he getting investigated by the House? I would assume if anybody could do it, it would have to be like the House making a motion. Because I mean, it's never happened.
They don't have,
a pardon has never been overturned before, right?
The only, as far as I'm aware, and again, this is the research that I did for this video, and this is a relatively new area to me, so it's very possible there are things that I'm missing. But the pardon cases that have gone through the Supreme Court have dealt with people rejecting a pardon they were given. So, for example, in 1915, Woodrow Wilson pardoned a guy in order to try to compel him to talk, because by pardoning him, he could no longer invoke his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. So the pardon was kind of weaponized in that case.
Yeah.
And so this guy had appealed saying, well, I don't want the pardon. And the Supreme Court said, also in an 1833 case with somewhat similar facts, yeah, you have to accept the pardon. Now, that it makes sense that a person who was given a pardon and doesn't want it could appeal the case. But I don't know who would appeal in this case, because Congress can't do that, at least as far as I'm aware, and they don't have any prosecutorial power themselves. In theory, the special counsel's office or someone at the DOJ could, but why would Biden allow them to do that when he's their boss? Like, maybe there's something I'm missing, but the only way I could see this happening is if the special counsel's office, David Weiss's office, like remains intact, or someone in the incoming new DOJ takes over. Could the DOJ, under a new president, post January 20th, go in and appeal this? Is that possible? I need someone who knows how this would work procedurally to explain to, because I don't like, if it could get to the Supreme Court, I think the argument is important, and I think it's kind of persuasive. I just don't know how it gets there. I don't know what process that would be.
Because I guess even that the House committees that are looking into him, they don't have prosecutorial power. They just have like so they couldn't appeal it.
Yeah, I don't think they have
would
any.
Have to be the DOJ.
Yeah, they don't have any. They don't have standing. They're not a relevant party to the prosecution of Hunter Biden. They have. Well, yeah. They can investigate, but they can't bring charges. The only thing they can do is refer to the DOJ for charges, but it's the DOJ's call.
Can't they ask for clarification on matters? I feel like that's something they're allowed to do, right?
I don't know. Could they just go to the Supreme Court and say, we don't have the legal standing to bring the Hunter case to you, but hypothetically, could you explain to us how that would go if you?
But I guess they probably I think this has happened, but I think it was in matters of congressional law where they're allowed to ask for clarification,
and I think they
probably can't ask for it on.
I've never heard of the Supreme Court just offering a hypothetical opinion in that way. People who know a lot more about the legal process in the Supreme Court would be able to tell me more definitively on that. But I imagine even if such a thing was possible, there's no way they would say, hypothetically, this is what we would do to Hunter Biden. I don't think they would breach that sort of norm. Like, they're just not going to call out a guy and be like, if we saw the case, this is what we would do to you.
Well, so I guess what could happen is Trump could prosecute him or could look into him for, a Ukraine thing. Something could come up.
Yeah.
He could cite the pardon, and then maybe the whole pardon gets overturned.
That's true.
And then these old charges come back up and bite him in the butt.
Yeah, you're probably right. That would probably be the path, is bring charges anyway. And when the judge looks at it and says, what the hell are you talking about? He was pardoned. You say, that's the thing. He wasn't, though. Yeah. It was actually an illegal and or unconstitutional pardon, and you litigate it that way.
Because I was even looking at plea deal immunity, because that's probably the closest thing to a presidential pardon. I know it's not a pardon, but there's just so little to look at for pardons that I was looking at other things. And even if you're doing a plea deal for immunity, everything has to be specific.
And
you can't see anything where it's just like, you've committed no crimes for a decade. It's ridiculous.
Well,
what if it came out that he had murdered someone?
Yeah, and it's implied. The Supreme Court has already established you can't pardon for future crimes. And it's implied in the reasoning there. Well, why not? Why can't you give a guy like a blank check to do whatever federal crimes he wants for the rest of his life? The implied reasoning is because it lacks definition. It lacks specificity. If that's the reason why we don't give someone a get out of jail free card for the rest of their life, at least from federal prosecution, why doesn't that reasoning apply just as validly in retrospect, apply to the past just as validly as it does to the future? It doesn't make a lot of sense that you can just give someone a decade get out of jail free card with no accountability, no check on that power. This is such an interesting area of constitutional law to me now, because if the president actually has an unchecked power in that way that nobody can really challenge, that seems to defy the system of checks and balances we have in every other context, where someone has an unchecked power. Nobody can challenge it in court. No other branch actually has a check on. I'm struggling to think of another power where a branch has absolute unchallengeable power in that way, if that's the way we're going to handle pardons.
Yeah, ideally there wouldn't be any of those. So
And that's kind of the system. Like the system is designed so there aren't.
But I guess if it's really hard for anybody to, if there's nobody to appeal it, then it kind of works that way. So you have to wait. You have to beat them in an election first, and then get somebody to.
And I guess that's the
change
counter
a
I've
DOJ.
read too is, well, the accountability mechanism, it's two things. Because there's always two large accountability mechanisms on the president. Number one is impeachment. So if Congress thinks he's abusing his power, they could get rid of him. But good luck with that. I mean, the Democrats could watch him actually kill a man. They'll not impeach him. And then there's election. People can vote him out of office. Problem is he's a lame duck president who's like 80 million years old, and he's going to leave tomorrow and probably die the next day. So really those accountability mechanisms don't do anything in this particular case. He's just kind of beyond it all. So anyway, I really appreciate your insight on this because I've been trying to think about this the last couple of days. I really find it very interesting. So thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a crazy case. Do I have time for one more? Or no?
All right. Be quick though.
I just this CEO of the UnitedHealthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, was there like no security in there? Like, isn't he a CEO of one of the biggest wouldn't he have private security? Like maybe not that they would save his life, but at least catch the guy.
Well, so as far as I understand, there's an investor conference going on, I believe, at the hotel that this happened at. But yeah, I think is the situation. So to your point, number one, does he not just have a security entourage with him at all times? But number two, isn't there some kind of security set up around the building? I don't know. I mean, I assume there's security inside.
Like, somebody that rich is going to have at least one guy with him.
Well, especially because his wife
also,
is saying,
if you work in healthcare, if you work in health insurance, you should have security because I want to kill him. I don't even have United.
God rest his soul, of course. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And it's not just that you could theorize that someone doesn't like you because you denied a claim or because your policy didn't cover this or whatever. His wife is quoted in the reports as saying, yeah, we got some threats recently, especially in that circumstance. How you don't have someone escorting you. I mean, at this point, you could make the argument, if you're if you're a guy in New York City who can't afford private security to walk around with you should, because it's New York City. I mean, because
after Daniel Penny, no bystanders are going to step up and help you. So you got no other options.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out too. But I appreciate your call, man. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Miss Malevolent. Miss Malevolent, how are you? Miss Malevolent.
Well, hello there.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's great to be into the holiday season now. Thanksgiving, Christmas, everything's festive, everything's optimistic. It's a magical time of year, it's been a crazy few months, as you're well aware, but yeah, it's a great time to be alive. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Speaking real quick on that, did you see what the White House put out for Christmas decorations?
Oh God, no. What do they got?
Oh, it looks like what it should look like, a clown show.
Where can I find it?
Absolutely hideous.
Let me see.
On X, it's all over X, and in fact, somebody made a video comparing and contrasting Melania's Christmas decorations with Jill, who has absolutely no taste.
Are you talking?
whatsoever.
So is it just like this row of like garland or whatever you call this in the hall? Is that what you're getting at?
It's like clown colors, like a literal circus clown colors. And you can't even call it like pride.
That's not what I'm seeing like all white. I was going to say, I actually don't hate this because I tend to, I'm seeing is I like.
She has one area that's all white. There's another area that looks like Barnum and Bailey.
Let me see if I can find it. And okay. I found it. No, what I saw originally looked, dare I say, kind of good. But I gather this must be what you're getting at
Yes.
here. I don't know if you can see
Yes.
what's on the stream right now, but
Yeah,
and
I'm
there's probably a
looking.
little bit of a delay for you, maybe 15, 20 seconds. Let's see.
Mhm.
Looking at Jill Biden's tacky Christmas decorations makes me wonder if we were wrong on who we thought dropped coke in the White House. It was Jill all along, I guess.
Holy.
Yeah, this is
I
terrible. What is
mean,
there's
wow.
like this merry-go-round type thing.
Yeah.
Wait, a merry-go-round
Yeah.
Christmas tree? Now this is kind of advanced. Actually, I think my son would really like this. This is a combination of great things. It looks hideous, don't get me wrong. But from a child's perspective, the idea of a Christmas tree combined with a merry-go-round, that's kind of appealing. That's a little
Okay,
creative.
true. I'll give you that. But oh my goodness. She is, that is, and remember last year or the year before with the, I don't know, Cirque du Soleil bullshit they had going on. It was absolutely.
You know what this looks like?
I'm just,
What is that? What do you call that stuff that's like the strings of paper that are just random colors that you buy at like the party store for $1? What are those called? It's
confetti?
like think
confetti?
think like a colored roll of toilet paper. And it's like she just
Yes.
draped those from the windows. Like you just
Yes.
took toilet paper that was in any color from a bargain bin
Yes.
at the party store and draped it from the windows. I
Probably.
don't know what that material is called, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah, well, crepe, I think, is the material, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, they're saying in your chat streamers.
Yeah,
So that might be
something
it.
like that. It looks like like she just chose random colors and hung them from the window.
I'm just like this. I'm so glad this is the last year for that. That's all I have to say on that topic. On the others, on your, approved topic list. Yeah, this Hegseth thing, I hope he powers through with that because we've got to break this cycle of, oh, anonymous source says he raped 50 women. Like we gotta break this cycle of going with these anonymous sources. If they're anonymous, I'm not going to give them any credibility whatsoever.
I think that's pretty fair.
Uh,
Yeah, and I think if you're going to make an accusation to sink a person's job or career in that way, I don't think it's unfair to ask you to be public. And I know that it's high pressure to say like go before a Senate committee or something like that. But if you're serious, are you serious or are you not? And if you think this person, if your accusations are so serious that you think this person would be damaging to the country, you also have to answer like, why do you wait to make these sorts of accusations until this person is in position to say gain an office? It's like with Brett Kavanaugh, for example, if we were to
Exactly.
believe Christine Blasey Ford, you expect, first of all, I don't believe anything she said, of course.
Absolutely not.
But if I did, I'm supposed to believe that she just sat around while he was a federal judge and didn't have objections to him, having a pretty high profile career or important or consequential career. Didn't object that whole time.
Yeah.
It's only when he's a Supreme Court justice that suddenly you crawl out of the woodwork and make these accusations. This sort of tactic, it has to be serious. Of like people who are real victims. I don't want to make it unduly hard on them. But if you're going to try to sink a person and ruin their career, there's got to be a little skin in the game. There's got to be something at stake. You can't just be someone hiding behind the scenes and lobbing grenades without putting your name to it. I agree completely.
Absolutely. I'm a person who's very much about truth and fairness. And unfortunately, like you said, the timing of all of these accusations are always suspect. And, I need, for Republicans, people on the center right to just kind of grab their sack and power through. I'm tired of people trying to acquiesce or please people and say, we're the better statesmen. No. Start saying, well, the timing of these accusations seem a little bit suspect, but we will find out through the Senate hearings what is this, and we'll get to the bottom of this for the American people.
Yeah, just don't
Instead,
hide from
you
it.
have this.
You know, it's like
this flim flam, wishy washy, milk toast bullshit.
yeah,
I'm tired of that.
if you oppose Pete Hegseth, which you're entitled to do, whether I agree or
Yes.
not, you're entitled to do that. But you should have the decency to explain to the American people why. Likewise, you don't hide from an accusation, like you're saying, but you don't, as a U.S. Senator, I don't think you should hide from your reasoning on why you oppose a particular nominee. You don't just anonymously say it to NBC so that they put it out there without your name in it and apply all this pressure to try to get the person taken out before you ever actually do the decent thing and give them the public hearing they're entitled to and put your name on record explaining your support or opposition. Even if I disagree, I'll respect a person who puts their opinion out there and explains why a lot more than a person who hides behind the scenes and doesn't have the courage to stand by their convictions in that way.
Absolutely. And lastly, with what was it? Oh, it fell out of my head. All I have to say is I can't wait for January 20th. I'm trying to figure out a way how to get to the inauguration myself, but I can't wait till January 20th because they're doing a lot of things that, they're really trying to handicap him going out the door, like trying to swipe all the silverware and whatever. Oh, I now remember why. The handicap.
Really quick, what about the silverware? Is that a metaphor? Or
I
is
said
that
they're really no. Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that
It's a
one before.
metaphor.
I thought there was
No,
something.
they're
Are they actually poisoning the silverware in the White House?
No, they're trying. Like they're
I've become
just
friends with school
the
shooters.
Clintons literally tried to swipe the silverware out of the White House.
Oh,
They're
swipe
basically
it. So I
trying-
thought you said spike.
Yeah.
Swipe.
No.
Steal.
Swipe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
thought you meant like set traps for Trump and his people.
Well, they are setting traps for Trump and his people with trying to codify federal employees being allowed to work from home till 2029. And
No, I didn't even
like
hear
that.
about that twice.
Yeah, look into that.
What's the
That'll be for your
reasoning?
Sunday
Just
show.
because we've become accustomed to a certain norm, or are they actually afraid of COVID, or what?
Because Elon and Vivek, rightly so, because Elon is very much a supporter of why do we have these gigantic offices if no one's going into them? We're
Yeah.
spending millions or billions of dollars. You're getting to sit at home and be at home comfortable in your house when you should be coming into work and putting in work for the American people. So he made these statements. Vivek made the same. A lot of people did. And then now all of a sudden Biden's like, oh, well, federal employees, I think something like 40,000 or 49,000 federal employees had their contract renegotiated so that they could work from home until 2029. So,
Oh,
yeah, they're
man.
literally doing as much damage as possible so that people can't put in reforms to cut down waste.
Well, maybe it's better, if these people are wasting time working at home, as in not working at home, maybe they're actually doing less damage to the country. Maybe it's of benefit.
No, I'd rather they just be fired. If they
All
can't come in, get rid of them. But lastly, I will say, as far as it reminded me of the pardoning. Come on. Everybody's trying to flip the script about, even, and it galls me when Republicans make these points as well. Well, I'm a father, and I would probably do the same. No, this man pardoned him for a specific amount of time. He didn't pardon him from 2016 to when his charges for gun and tax evasion and all of this. He didn't pardon him for that. He went back to 2014 and he stated, you are pardoned for things you may or may not have been charged with.
That was 4 days ago, 5
Stop
days ago.
playing their linguistic game and call a spade a spade. I am sick of us trying to find a middle ground with abject liars. Stop it. He
Yeah.
pardoned him for Burisma. He is shielding himself and his family and his devilish dealings and making money off the American people. He is shielding his son for that. And you
Yeah.
watch what these other pardons are for.
You know,
And
it's
no
interesting you
one's
mentioned.
talking about all the Chinese nationals he's been pardoning either.
I actually
Go
haven't
ahead.
even heard of that, to your point. So I guess I should look into that. But it's interesting
Please
you bring up
do.
the.
Have it ready for the Sunday show.
I mean, I'll have to
Go
check it
ahead.
out. But it's interesting you bring that point up because actually, we're talking about this with my dad earlier, and he said the exact same thing. Everybody's saying, I understand why he would do this as a father. And yes, I get a father's, in general, I'm not saying Joe Biden, but I get a father's protective instinct for his children. That said, though, and my dad was making this point, it's like, well, surely there are crimes that your son or daughter could commit that you would want justice for, are there not? Now, I'm not saying Hunter Biden is a murderer, but let's say, for example, that, and Hunter Biden might be a murderer. I don't know.
Come on, man.
Wouldn't surprise me. But let's say that I knew that my son was a cold-blooded murderer, and I had the choice to protect him from any accountability or to subject him to some form of justice. I'm not even saying like turn him into the whatever. I'm just saying, as a father, if I had to make that choice, isn't it also fatherly to expect accountability from your children? And what's interesting about Hunter and Joe Biden constantly talks about Hunter like he's some, 18-year-old who has really made some mistakes, but he's getting better. He's on the right track. Hunter Biden is like 55 or 56 or something like that. At what point fathers protect their children, air quotes, yes, but it is also a father's job to expect accountability from his children and his sons. And I know it's easy for me to say when I don't have adult children in this way, but I'll be damned if my sons grow up to behave like total jackasses in defiance of not just the law, but basic moral principles, and expect to get away with it in this world. And if I not only condition them to believe that, but take steps myself to offer them that sort of protection from the moral truth of the world, I'm actually doing a bad job as a father. Again, this is not me urging you to like call the cops on your kids. I'm saying that if you don't demand and expect accountability, you're a shitty parent.
Absolutely. And let's be frank, no one believes this shit. Think of the high-profile cases with like JonBenet Ramsey when everybody thought it was her brother that they're like, the parents are protecting
I was kind of into that.
son.
We watched the Netflix documentary. I was like, I think Burke did it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, no one believes that because Casey Anthony, JonBenet Ramsey, you can name a whole list.
Wait, who
of
are you
these
saying? You think that John and Patsy killed JonBenet?
No, I mean, I don't know. I just remember the fervor at the time when it occurred. I'm an old lady, so I remember when it was going down. I haven't watched the Netflix special. Maybe I should, but I remember, everybody was like, the parents are trying to protect the son. They're terrible.
Yeah,
blah,
I
blah,
kind of
blah.
buy it.
Now all of a sudden, juxtapose that now. I mean, it's a father's love.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a
You're right.
Give me a damn break. No one believes that. No one believes that. If people thought that your son who was raping kids and you hid him, they wouldn't go, well, they're parents that are protecting their son. They're gonna say we're protecting a pederast.
Yeah. There are moral boundaries that you should expect your children to respect. And I'm no fan of like running to the feds for justice all the time or something like that. But if we're considering what Joe Biden is doing from the fatherly perspective, he's not doing a good job as a dad. It's not about like
horrible.
Yeah, it's not about the legal technicals. It's about what you expect of your kids. And clearly, this guy has let Hunter get away with anything and everything. But I think we all know why. It's not just like, oh, he's a lenient dad who's kind of has some morally questionable views or is afraid to enforce moral truth upon his children. We all know the bags of cash for the big guy. I mean, that's really what this is about. It's about personal enrichment. It's not really about moral truth or accountability from a parenting perspective.
Exactly. He expected that, well, initially he was going to win, even though he was deluded because his internal polling showed him losing worse than Kamala. And she always knew she was going to lose because their internal polling showed that they were always going to lose. But they had that deluded hope that they were going to get in, or they're cheating, or whatever the hell backup plan they had. And then he would have pretended that he was the moral statesman that didn't whatever, and the charges probably would have gotten a slap on the wrist. But now with Trump getting in office and the people he's putting in place, he's like, oh wow, there are real world consequences that I'm going to have to face.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pardon my son, and he's probably going to pardon a whole bunch, probably his brother. Who knows? I don't think
Get
he
ready.
can pardon himself.
Everyone gets a pardon under their Christmas tree from
Yeah,
Joe this
so
year.
it's like, yeah.
But
So that's all I wanted to say.
All
But
right.
look into that. Look into those other pardons for Chinese nationals.
Yeah, I didn't hear about
The
that,
other
so I
thing.
definitely will. But I appreciate your
One
call.
of them, I believe, was a pederast as well.
Wow.
One
Okay.
of them.
Hope
look
you had a great
into it.
Thanksgiving. If I don't speak with you beforehand,
I
Merry
did.
Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you and yours.
All right.
Take care.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Okay, I'll take a few more calls before the top of the hour, and I'm doing a terrible job with checking in with Super Chat tonight. I recognize that. I haven't forgotten about you guys. Appreciate you. As this show develops, my timing on where to fit Super Chat in the Wednesday production is a little off, clearly. So going forward, I'll try to see if I can get that mid-show so I don't leave you guys hanging the whole show. Now I'm kind of near the end of calls, and it's weird if I take like a break and then come back to it 10 minutes later. So anyway, thanks for bearing with me. Ratchet Republican, what's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I just wanted to talk about, because of the SCOTUS trans kids nonsense. There's no such thing as a trans kid. I wanted to talk about my experience when I was growing up. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. I was gender non-conforming. I was more feminine. And
when you say that, was that like a title you embraced, or you just say that in like
I was just
you didn't think you were another gender or something?
No, absolutely not. But here's the thing. Boys would come up to me and tell me that I would act. I was just acting normal. I just didn't think I was acting out of the ordinary. But boys would come up to me and tell me that I acted like a girl. I would have teachers that would come up to me and say that I looked like a girl and I acted like a girl. So, I know that if I was growing up in these times, I would have been probably captured by the trans ideology.
Totally. Every tomboy out there, every girl who liked to play sports with the boys, and didn't necessarily like ponies and pink dresses and all that stuff. Yeah, they all would have been trans.
And the thing is that where has all these trans kids be hiding? Because I didn't see them in the 80s. I didn't see them in the 90s.
Dude,
I didn't see them in the... Where are these people hiding?
I think about that.
All of a sudden
I think about that all the time because as most people know, I went to college in Portland 2006 to 2010. And I went to a liberal arts college, fairly small, but it was a disproportionately lesbian campus community. So everywhere I walk, it's just dykes everywhere, okay? That's what this school was. So being at Dyke Central in Portland at a liberal arts college, how I had never encountered a trans person in my life is baffling. That's amazing. Like there should have been nothing but trannies walking around that place because it was like more masculine women ever. None of them thought they were trans in a place that is as progressive as any in this country. The first trans person I ever saw was when later, so after college, I moved down to the Bay Area of California, and I had a friend in San Francisco, and there was this really famous breakfast place that was run by this drag queen guy. And everybody's like, you got to go. This guy like cooks. He's a drag queen who cooks you breakfast. Now, don't get me wrong. If you asked me to do that today, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. But back then, I was a good progressive guy in the Bay Area, whatever. I was like, I was a person who was open to this weird shit like that. Not that I ever did it. I did it once. Okay. No conspiracy, no theorizing on the internet about how many times I went to this drag queen breakfast place in San Francisco. But I'm telling you, I did it once. And the guy cooked an okay breakfast. Actually, it was pretty good. But he was like in a dress or whatever. This man in a dress. This is the first time I've seen like a drag queen, tranny, whatever in public is when I'm 20. I must have been like 24 in San Francisco. And again, this is like circa 2011. Okay. This is not years and years and years ago. So to your point, and sorry to take so long in getting to my point.
Great story. Compelling and rich.
The massive explosion of transgenderism in just the last decade is like, again, young me walking around Portland, walking around San Francisco. I never saw trannies. Why weren't there a million trannies everywhere? Why weren't there schools full of trans kids in these places? It is
and where were all the,
it's a
where
new
were all
phenomenon.
these suicides? Yeah, where were all these suicides that all these people that are offing themselves because they don't have access to this life-saving, gender-affirming care? It's all a scam. It's a solution in search of a problem, and it's people who are looking for another issue because they've run out of issues in the gay community. They've run out of issues in the black community. They're trying to find some kind of oppression to run on. So they just create new identities and claim that these people are oppressed. I just
when you mentioned that you were. The people said you acted feminine or that you were feminine in your presentation or behavior. Did anyone ever try to introduce these ideas to you? And also, what era are we talking about? Like, I don't mean to ask you for your age or anything, or just like what years are we talking about?
I grew up in the area of anybody who knows the WB. I don't know if you ever heard of the WB. Dawson's Creek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I remember that.
That era.
Yeah.
I grew up in that era.
Okay.
So that's when I grew up, and basically, I just said that I acted like a girl because I was very skinny and I had very angular features, and they said that I looked like a girl. And there were times because I didn't fit in as much that I maybe said maybe I am a girl, but that was not an option when I was growing up in Jamaica. That was not. I was glad that I had those boundaries. That was not an option. You had to go through your puberty, you had to be a man,
And so nobody even presented this to you, like, hey, maybe you are this.
Wear a dress or something. No, nothing like that. Hell no. I had to accept the fact that I was a man and I had to become one. And I'm so glad that I did. I don't have to worry about hormones. I don't have to worry about putting on a yaki weave or anything like that. And this is the thing that the majority of reasons why people are offing themselves, because you're fighting against your nature. You're fighting every single day, mentally, physically.
Yeah.
Every single day. You're fighting against your true nature.
If you put yourself in a war with reality, you will die. You're going to get killed. You can't fight reality, man. You can't fight the truth of the world. You can't fight nature as you're putting it. You'll end up dead one way or another by doing that. And the lie, the insanity that we're saving these kids from suicidal ideation by enabling the delusions with scalpels or with hormones or other chemicals. No, you want to know why there's such a high rate of suicide or suicidal ideation. It's exactly the point that you're making. It's because you're encouraging these people to pick a fight with reality. You'll lose every single time if you do that.
Exactly. And what's the most infuriating thing is these trans ideologists always use slavery or something to do with black people, the civil rights of black people to justify their cause. I just cannot stand it. What happened? I don't know if you saw the clips of the Kentanji.
It's pronounced Jumanji, but yes.
Jumanji. I don't know if you saw the Kentanji clip where she was trying to equate it with Loving versus Virginia, which is an interracial marriage. I'm like, it has nothing to do with each other. One is an immutable characteristic. One is not. One is a made up characteristic. It's just invented out of thin air.
If you were to grant her premise that this is a law making sex-based discrimination or sex-based distinction, I can see how you make the argument that she is. I'm not agreeing with it, of course. I think it's nonsense. But the reason I think it's nonsense is because this law is not making sex-based distinctions. This law is making distinctions about medical procedures. This is a quack nonsense medical procedure. It doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, a they, a them, a whatever. We don't do that in the state of Tennessee because it's medical nonsense. That's not a sex-based distinction. It's a distinction based in medicine, a distinction based in science as assessed by the state of Tennessee, which is well within their rights.
It's not a civil rights issue. It's a states' rights issue. The state has an illegitimate interest in protecting the rights of children.
Yeah.
Right? That is why we don't allow children to have, consent to sexual behavior, because they know the consequences of such things. The same thing when it comes to medications and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
the state has a right to curate that.
I'm glad you make that point, because the point of the Biden lawyer and the point of the ACLU was, the children are consenting through their parents. The parents have made an informed decision. Okay, but even then, that doesn't mean that the issue is beyond regulation by the state. For example, did dad consent to the beating that he just gave his son? Mm-hmm. Can you do that? Did dad consent to the sexual abuse that he just committed against his daughter?
Exactly.
Is parental consent the only issue that matters here, or are there abuses that can still be committed even with the presence of parental consent? And that's exactly what the state of Tennessee is getting at.
That's correct. And that's why we have the what we call DCF, Department of Children's Services. That's why we have those things, is to protect children, the people who are vulnerable, the most vulnerable. And these people with these mental conditions are the most vulnerable people that we have. And they need mental help. They don't need medical help. They need mental help. They need to be able to work through their issues and do the hard work to get to who they truly are, which is what their sex is. And it just pisses me off that, you have these gender activists who are clapping themselves on the back while these children go through irreversible physical and medical treatments. And then when they're destroyed, they're the ones clapping themselves in the back about how compassionate they are. And I will end on this. So that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And all these people with all these good intentions are leading these children to hell. And that's what I believe.
Well, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. And have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to take 2 more calls. Then I'll get to Super Chats and we'll call it a night. Rusty Culture, go ahead.
Good evening, Matt Christiansen.
Hello, sir. What's on your mind?
How are this fine Wednesday evening?
Oh, I can't complain. How are you?
Great. I actually had 2 things I would like to discuss. If we
All
keep
right.
it short. We'll keep it short.
Get on
First,
it. Yeah.
I didn't think I'd want to talk about it, but you made some good points on the trans kids SCOTUS, and looking at your thumbnail for the stream, one of the signs I completely agree with. Let's protect the trans kids, please. That's what we're trying to do.
Yes, yeah. It is, when you think about it, it is rather insulting that these activists believe that their opponents want to harm children, or that's implied by what they're saying. No. They are motivated by exactly what you're talking about. They want to help children. They don't want to see them succumb to this delusion, this abuse. These trans activists can disagree. They're wrong, of course. They can disagree, but it is the implied assignment of motive that is especially insulting, I think, as you're saying.
Yeah, especially looking back at just targeting children, going through puberty in particular. I remember that. Nothing felt right. Everything was weird. You didn't fit in. And if somebody came along and said, well, there's a reason for that, and this will make you feel better. And also, you got a golden ticket that anybody that makes fun of you or insults you or does anything, they are instantly a bigot and you can file charges against them. I'm like, sign me up. That sounds great.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I remember, I don't think I was a particularly strange teenager or that I had anything any weirder than the next guy, but I do remember just the anxiety and the uncertainty that goes along with that age and being insecure about this or that and trying to get through the day at school without somebody noticing or saying something to you, or just trying to avoid embarrassment about whatever it is you may feel insecure or sensitive about. And if you had a button, and I like the way you presented that, like if I was 13, 14, like sophomore in high school, whatever, and someone said, hey, I've got a button that will like alleviate all the social anxiety you have and provide you with a shield to make sure that anybody who comes at you is not just discredited, but punished, because they're going to get in trouble with the principal, or they're going to be branded this way or that. Man, even beyond the validation of whatever gender delusion you may have, just the social protection that offers is very enticing to someone of that age.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, and trying to force this on children, especially the permanent damage that is done from that. Because I think most people that are sitting there and want to, they're active. They're not really activists for it. They're just like, well, we don't want to be mean, and these people are just trying to identify it. It's like, if you actually look into any of the thing involved with this, it is horrifying what has to be done. And
are you talking about the actual surgeries, or what are you talking about?
Yeah, the surgeries and the puberty blockers and all that stuff. It's like, you haven't looked into any of this stuff, have you? Because I'm not talking you, but I'm talking the people that are pushing it.
I've for a while there, a lot of that stuff, how sometimes you're scrolling through X, formerly Twitter, and all of a sudden, I don't know about you, but every once in a while I'll be like, oh, okay, there's a dismembered, recently aborted fetus. Holy shit. Okay. Obviously, I think it's very important that those things are known and that those things are seen by people who are skeptical of the reality. But for a while there, maybe they cleaned it up, but I would be scrolling through X and be like, oh, okay, there's one of those fake tranny dicks.
That's a big game, man.
Did you ever get that? Like
I have not gotten that.
I've seen it. They're sewed up like a weird sausage. They don't look. I don't know.
That one's bad, and the other one's bad too, because it's this wound that you need to keep open, and it's like, that sounds horrible.
Well, yeah, it's obviously you can't just manufacture these things, and it's so insulting too that, like, for these people who claim that gender identity is so complicated and so involved. Obviously, when people say your manhood, there's what they mean that anatomically, like they're referring to the equipment when they say your manhood. But being a man is so much more than just that, in the same way that being a woman is so much more than just that. And so to reduce it to this horrifying Frankenstein artificial member poking out on X, or this actual axe wound in the way that you're describing, it's such a it's just such a disrespect to the natural things that make men and women beautiful and valuable in their own ways. To think that like humans could recreate that value or that beauty by sewing up some sausage creation or by carving a hole in somebody's crotch. It never turns. It's like if you don't, how do I phrase this in a way
that doesn't turn your stomach?
Yeah, it's like you never thought genitalia were beautiful until you've seen the fake ones. Okay. You get what I mean? Like,
yes,
the artificial is way uglier. People say like bumping uglies, no, but bumping fake uglies is way uglier. I assure you. Okay. Anyway,
man, I've never appreciated God's creation as much until we've seen man's creation.
Now that makes me wonder: has there ever been ugly on ugly? That is to say, has there been fake on fake? We ever had that kind of interaction?
That's disgusting.
I don't really want to know.
I'm sure it's out there. If I tried to find it,
I'm sure it's out there, and I don't want to see it.
Well, any closing thoughts from you, sir?
Well, you did mention that you hadn't heard anything from Justice Gorsuch. There was another justice that we didn't hear about either, and normally he's pretty active online, so I was curious. Did you hear anything about what Justice Dankula had to say about the trans kids?
No, I did not. What was? Did he have a take?
Oh no, he's not been active for a while, so I was just curious if you.
No. No, has he ever made that into like a real judge show? Is that a? Could he do like Judge Judy?
No, it was just a Twitter handle that he throws out there every once in a while.
Yeah, I've seen. He has like
in.
the robe, and he tricks him into thinking that he's a real like judge or something. But he's the kind of guy. I think Matt Walsh did that for a while, didn't he? Do like a Judge Judy style show. I haven't seen it, but I think that Dankula would be a great personality for that format of show too. If he actually wanted to do like a Judge Judy bit, that'd be really funny.
Those bits were good though. How many people he snagged with his just craziness that these leftists raging at him after the Supreme Court does something. It's like
it shows how closely they pay attention. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if he opines,
just look at the last name. Just go Dank. But really.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks for calling in and have a great night.
You too.
All right. Last word tonight is going to go to the guy whose name I can't pronounce, but if I recall correctly, it's Justin in Chinese. Is that correct?
What?
Is that wait.
No, not at all. Not in the slightest.
Did I mix you up?
Yes, I believe you did.
Oh, well, how do I say this name?
Just call me Vong. It's the call sign I usually go by.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. This isn't Chinese at all?
No, you're fine. No, not in the slightest. It's from the Star Wars Extended Universe.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for totally messing up the name. Anyway, all right, Mr. Vong, what do you got for me?
No worries. All right. Give me a moment to take a nice long drink from my Chat Tard Tears mug.
Chat Tard Tears?
Indeed.
Okay, what's that about?
With that taken care of, I am about to piss off your entire live chat, and I'm going to revel in doing it.
Oh no! What are you going to do?
Talk about Christmas traditions and all that.
Why would that piss anybody off? Unless you're going to like talk about, I don't know, blasphemous stuff or something.
Oh please! I'm a traditional Catholic. Absolutely not.
So who's going to become enraged by traditional Catholic Christmas traditions?
You probably.
All right, go ahead. See if you can piss me off.
Christmas, and indeed all of the accompanying celebrations, decoration, festivity, etc., including but not limited to Christmas decorations, Christmas music, etc., are not to begin until December the 25th.
Ah, okay, so this is the angle. So not until Christmas Day itself. Okay, I won't interrupt. Let me go ahead and make your case in full. I will resist the temptation.
See, I told you I was going to hack you off.
You can't say that in the context of tonight's show. You can't joke about hacking things.
Oh, I guess that's fair. Still, I already did. So, anywho, so here's the thing. Christmas. I am okay with, like, say, in the very late evening of December the 24th, the family is all gathered together, and they all gather around and put the Christmas tree up then and decorate it so that when the kids get up in the morning, it's all decorated and ready and it's Christmas, right? But here's the thing. Christmas is a religious celebration. It is a celebration of the birth of Christ. All right, and it is not only deeply, how do I put this? Deeply demeaning to the Christian faith and indeed to all Christians, but also indeed very much to the celebration itself, to allow it to be commercialized and secularized, and to have it begin so long before the time it's actually supposed to start. Because Christmas should be something very, very special. It comes once a year, and the Christmas season liturgically does not last all that long. And so currently, we are in the season of Advent, liturgically, which serves a very important purpose. We are supposed to be preparing ourselves, purifying ourselves, and making ourselves ready for the coming of the Lord. Not only, for the celebration of Christmas, but also in preparation for his return at both at the end of time and for his return, at least to us personally, at our deaths, as our judge. And so this is a time in which we are to be, introspecting, looking inside ourselves, and figuring out how we can do better, and committing to doing that, and starting acting upon it already. When Christmas comes, it is a time of intense joy and celebration, and that's wonderful. But to start seeing Christmas decorations in stores in August? No, none of this. I am done with that crap.
Well stated. Actually, the argument that I find the most persuasive is it the devaluing of Christmas? And I'm not coming at this from any kind of like scriptural basis or something. And of course, as you're probably aware, like I'm a new member of the faith. Like this is going to be the first Christmas for me as an adult, having declared myself a follower of Christ. And so I haven't really considered Christmas in this way in my adult life until now. But I take your point that by stretching it out so long so that we have possibly months of commercialized consumerism as opposed to recognition for the reason for the holiday, that the special aspect of it is potentially devalued. That's very interesting. Now, let me ask you, is there... You mentioned some aspects of scripture or like a religious teaching there. Is this something that comes from a particular tradition, or is this just something that you've come to on your own?
It's a fascinating question. So the first thing I have to ask is, what do you mean by tradition? Because there's capital T and there's lowercase t, and the two are nothing alike.
Well, I guess what I mean is there a particular piece of scripture or church teaching or doctrine that leads you to this conclusion, or is it just your own backlash against what Christmas has become in modern times?
So the liturgical calendar does indeed stipulate that until December the 25th, the season is Advent,
Okay.
and that is a specifically laid out liturgical season with specific purposes for the season itself, with specific, reasons for why it is the way it is, and with specific intentions for what the faithful are to do and to gain from this time, especially to the things we are to try to focus on, right? And that they are mostly, as I have stated, they're preparing ourselves, purifying ourselves, and figuring out how we need to do better, figuring out how we're going to do that, and getting going on it to make ourselves, a fitting abode for the Lord when He comes.
Well,
right?
I have to confess that because my family and I were so excited for Christmas this year, we committed the sin of decorating a Christmas tree before Thanksgiving. Would you be willing to forgive me for this act, or am I to be condemned?
Catapults
So
immediately.
You're thinking of the punishment. That's all. Which punishment do I pick? All right, man.
No, we're catapulting you across the wall, Matt.
Oh, well, across. Am I going across and over, or am I splattering into? What would be your preference?
Over. I'm not condemning you to death. I have not that authority. We're sending you to Mexico and not letting you come back.
Oh, okay. Well, I heard earlier there are Mexican tunnels that I might be able to use to get back in here. So somehow those people cross the border, so I'll figure it out.
I rather think he was referring to a certain other set of tunnels that happened in New York.
Maybe.
January.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate your thoughts. Did you have a closing thought before I let you
go? Yes, actually. On a slightly different topic, but rather related to the show and all that. I just wanted to say, also, given the nature of this comment, feel free to cut me off if you don't like it, but to all the absolute morons who have been running around screeching things about those comments made by a certain former co-host, y'all are certifiable window-licking idiots. Like, seriously, if I wanted to figure out the answer for myself, which clearly none of you do, either because you have no intellectual curiosity or because you don't have two brain cells among you to rub together, it wouldn't even be hard. But no, you're just idiots simping for someone who told you this and you haven't done any research. Come on, people, do better.
I feel like I understand half of what you're talking about, but Thank you for your thoughts. And you know, as I've mentioned, I'm on a serious note. Like I'm looking to be beyond it. You know, it's in the past.
Absolutely.
All I can do is move on and work hard, and so I'm definitely not trying to pick fights in that regard. Not that I'm saying you're wrong to, or you can say what you want. I'm just I'm avoiding comment for the purposes of working hard and peacekeeping.
I get that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the call. Merry Christmas, and I appreciate your thoughts.
Happy Advent to you.
You as well.
Thank you very much. Take care, Matt.
All right, that'll do it on calls tonight, and I am due to catch up with chatters. And again, I'm going to apologize to our chatters this evening. I kind of dropped the ball in making you guys hang on so long. And if you're supporting the show, I should get back with you sooner. So my apology for that. I'm going to think about my Wednesday format and how I can make sure I'm getting to my chatters more promptly, because I appreciate your support for the show. Danger Pudge, our mega lib government Jared Pole ass. This is Colorado. Jared Pole ass.
You are gay.
Ripped Biden for pardoning Hunter. That's as bad as it gets. Biden threw a FU grenade into the DNC and is showing the unholy DNC and Rhino ties. Biden's pardon list is a who's who of the Ukrainian money laundry service. Yeah, I assume they all have some connection beyond the fact that they are perceived to be, well, not just perceived to be, they are political adversaries of Donald Trump. I'm sure that's not the only thing they have in common. Oh, yes, they're all just terrified of a politically weaponized Trump DOJ. Is that it? There's really nothing else that connects them that might explain why they might want a preemptive pardon? We'll see. The world may never know. Thank you, Danger Punch. John Hoyle says, I worked at... I assume Smith & Wesson Engineering, SNWENG, I assume that's what that means. Smith & Wesson Engineering. We designed a double-action only pistol for the New York State Police Department. This requires full manual recocking. Okay. Yeah, I see all kinds of people speculating about what that guy's setup was, this assassin, this hitman, whatever he was in New York. Because, yeah, you see him fire and you see him rack the slide each time. So I don't know if he's clearing malfunctions. I don't know if potentially, as you're saying, that's like some sort of designed feature of the firearm. I don't have a lot of, I don't have a ton of suppressed gun experience myself, but I do know that introducing a suppressor can cause a lot of, function issues. So I'd assume that's what's going on there is some sort of, mismatch between the handgun he's using and the suppressor he's got on it and whatever that setup is. But if you're telling me that maybe there's an intent there, okay. I guess I've just never seen I've never seen a gun designed to work the way that one was working, but that doesn't mean that I mean, if you're working in an engineering department at a major firearms manufacturer, you would know. So I remain curious about what exactly that guy was running. Cause like I said, with Frank, he looked so calm and confident. And then it looked like his gun was almost non-functional because he's just fumbling around with it. It looked weird, but maybe there's something I don't understand about it. Kangaraider, thank you, John. Did I miss did I miss a Big Bird joke about Biden pardoning Fauci? Well, Biden has a long list of reasons why he deserves the biggest bird costume, but pardoning Fauci would certainly be one of those. In fairness, though, like, not that I'm trying to like be a wet blanket here. I'm not. And if they're trying to protect Fauci from like a Trump prosecution or something like that. I'm glad that Trump is president. Certainly very glad compared to the alternative of a Kamala Harris presidency. I think Trump will do a good job. I like Trump. All right, qualifications aside, Donald Trump did allow Dr. Fauci to sit where he was for an entire year of corona nonsense. And Dr. Fauci to issue all sorts of opinions, directives, to stand up there at the White House podium and explain what we're supposed to be doing about COVID. Now, I get it. Like, I tried to be fair with Dr. Fauci too in the early days. I didn't necessarily immediately see him as who I now believe to be an evil mastermind. But man, did Donald Trump keep that guy around for a long time and allow him to say a lot of things. This, in addition to, I think taking so much proud credit of Operation Warp Speed and the vaccine and all this stuff. Again, this is not me saying, I'm not trying to dump on Trump, because I think 2020 was a weird time. I remember I was there. But I guess what I'm saying is if Donald Trump really wanted to go after Fauci, he had a long time to do it, and he didn't. And I kind of wish he would have. But I don't know. We'll see if Fauci gets that pardon regardless. Daniel Yeager says, vote of no confidence in French government as their centrist coalition building exercise collapses. Le Pen is in waiting. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know much about French politics other than their what's the term in France? Is it prime minister? Is it president? The guy who runs their country, Macron, apparently is married to a woman much older who was his teacher or something like that. That's about all I can tell you about French politics. And I know Le Pen is always supposed to be in power, but then never is. I don't really understand how all that works. But hey, if France is finally starting to figure it out, that's good news too. Knuckle Hunkybuck says, Biden's pardon of Hunter sounds like it's crafted with a middle schooler's understanding of pardon power, not an adult politician sitting president.
Come on, man.
Well, I assume the other thing about the pardon was this was apparently done without the consultation of the pardon attorney at the Justice Department who normally handles these things. I assume Biden and his people look at the Constitution. Well, maybe that's a preposterous statement. They don't look at the Constitution. I think they view a virtually unlimited power in the Constitution, and they think, well, let's see what we can get away with. They do this in every other area of their power. They went beyond the bounds of their constitutional limitations many times. In fact, even in times where the Supreme Court told them you can't do that, they still went beyond it. So I think the thinking on this pardon is well, constitutional language is pretty broad. Why don't we go basically as broad as possible and see if anyone can stop us? It's almost like a game at this point. And to their point, the big bird costumes don't come, do they? I get it. I'm part of that too. I'm not sitting here casting judgment on others. Someone needs to do the costuming, and I should be careful here.
Fed.
I know they listen to the show. Hi, guys. And I know you're in my Discord server too, so double hello. The consequences for oath breaking have to come back into play. That's all. And Joe Biden has really tested those limits in every possible way he can, and this pardon is probably yet another effort. Knuckle Hunkybuck also says, if they allow federal employees to work from home, they don't need the buildings. Demolish them. Start with the IRS, Federal Reserve, FBI, CIA. And he also says tranny sex can be called bumping hideouses.
That's disgusting.
Bumping hideouses. I like that. Well, thank you, Knuckle Hunkybuck, for your continued contribution to the Super Chat segment.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
Very much appreciated. Let's see. I think we're set on YouTube and Tippy. Let me get over to Rumble. A friendly call screener, Dangerous Spaces, says Joe Biden described Hunter as being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. He also said he wouldn't pardon Hunter. So was he going to allow Hunter to be the subject to a corrupt process? Real classy, Joe. Well, of course, the explanation changes depending on the demands of the moment. So, foolish for me or us to try to make any sense of it, I suppose. GR token S word. Jeez. Oh, I actually thought this was the N-word, but he called me a dirty ass rigger.
The N-word. You know what the N-word is?
You find that video of the DEA pumpkin. The video is permanently... Wait, what? Oh, did we talk about this earlier? I don't know who this is, but geez, man. Video is permanently in his memory with Bluetooth videos and Breonna Keeler clips. Watch it on Christmas Eve. I can't remember this. What were we talking about earlier? I'm sorry, this has escaped my memory, so I guess I haven't seen the video. GR also says, you watching the last episodes of Yellowstone? You know that I am. They're dragging it out, of course. And actually, given Kevin Costner's, departure from the show, I think that they've handled the closing here fairly well. Now I'm not going to say any spoilers for people that are watching or going to get into it. I have my disputes with how it's handled, but I think that circumstances considered, they're doing a pretty good job. I think it's pretty interesting. I think there have been some good twists that I didn't necessarily expect. So I'm looking for the season ends, or the series ends. Yellowstone, the series, is over in what, like 2 weeks? I think the 15th is the last show. So I've enjoyed it so far. Watched Tulsa King yet? I have not. Stop watching those punk-ass Kardashians. I've never seen a single episode, but it is the sort of trash TV I probably would indulge in. But I did pick up some Kim K Beats on Black Friday. The trashy shit gonna fry your brain. She has her own Beats, earbuds or headphones or something? I did not know that. Likes to watch, says, I appreciate you, Frank, too. And remember, you may be commentator 6 to the world, but you're commentator 1 to us. Oh, man. Well, that's very sweet of you.
We love you. You're very special.
Cheers, he says. Well, cheers to you, too. Thank you for that. Mr. Token S-Word also says, I know exactly what you mean by different uses. It's like when I put together my scale models with all the necessary supplies, and when I buy moral glue just to sniff and huff. Hold on, you're ordering glue. Well, yeah, I know you're making a joke, but that's the point that the state of Tennessee was making. Take glue, for example. Glue can be used to huff, or it can be used in the way you describe to put models together. The same goes for drugs, okay? You could use drugs for a proven, medically viable, medically necessary, medically helpful reason, which is the whole reason we regulate them tightly in the first place, so that they are applied only for helpful therapeutic reasons and not for abusive reasons. Or you could just, chug every bottle of pills in the medicine cabinet and you'll probably die. Those are the sorts of things that the state of Tennessee is thinking about. It's not who can consume the drugs based on sex. It's what applications of these drugs or this tool or the glue that you're talking about, what applications are sensible, what applications are abusive. That's the distinction that they're making. It has nothing to do with the sex-based distinction. And Mr. Token S-Word also says affirmative action Jackson. That's right. That's another good one. Strikes again. We need to expand the court like the demon rats tried to do. It's so interesting that you say demon rats because I'm not taking shots, Mr. Token S-Word, but whenever I read comments on social media, it's like every boomer will call them, instead of calling them Democrats, it'll be demon rats, all caps R-A-T-S, demon rats. And so I always think like, oh God, the same people who call him Obummer. Oh, Obummer did this. Like, oh, I mean, I agree with your point, but do we have to be so cringe? Anyway, demon rats makes me laugh every time for that reason. Tried to say the demon rats tried to. So let me start over. Affirmative action Jackson strikes again. Need to expand the court like the demon rats tried to do. I don't want to say Barracuda is. I don't even know what that is. Lower IQ. Maybe it's a tie. Puerto Rico really isn't really a country of stupid people. Is that a Puerto Rican leader of some kind? It is a Puerto Rican term. A person from Puerto Rico. Yeah, I just haven't heard that before. But yeah. Thank you, Mr. Token S-Word. Dangerous Spaces also says the Hegseth accusations are the same idea as the Trump prosecutions. If Republicans respond to dirty tactics, the dirty tactics will continue to be used. Seriously, people, stop being such morons. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to love Pete Hegseth. You're allowed to oppose him for reasons, whatever reasons you want. But if you don't go through the process and you allow these dirty tactics to be legitimized, you're going to get more of them. Exactly as Dangerous Spaces is saying. All right, we're all set on Odyssey. We're all set on DLive. Let me give a quick refresh over on YouTube and Tippy, and I think we're all set. Looks good. Again, my appreciation for all you chatters and my apology for not getting to you earlier this evening. Thank you for your support for the show.
We love you. You're very special.
And with that, we will call it a stream. Thanks again to everybody tuning in live tonight. Appreciate you making the live show a success. Thanks to the live chatters and the super chatters for the same reason. If you're listening later on demand, thank you kindly as well. Thanks to my guest Frank from Quite Frankly, quitefrankly.tv. Thanks to producer Tim for all his help this evening as well. MattChristiansenMedia.com for anything show related. I'll be back on Sunday. Have a great night and a great week.